It is Friday night in March. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. I'm coming to you from the SpartanMag.com world headquarters in East Lansing, Michigan. We got Paul Konerdijk with us. Going to talk Michigan State's victory over Wisconsin Badgers in the Big Ten Tournament quarterfinals tonight in Indianapolis. Paul Konerdijk, associate editor, SpartanMag.com. He is down at in Indianapolis at the field house. What's it called? The Gainbridge Field House? What's it called down there, Paul? Do you know?
I don't know. It changes every 2 years, right? It was Banker's Life about 4 years ago. Now it is the Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Okay, it used to be the Sissoko Fieldhouse. I always forget where we are when we do our VCasts on location. I'm not down there on location with Paul right now. Paul doing a great job covering it for us down there for SpartanMag.com. Michigan State 69-63 over the Wisconsin Badgers. Paul, those of us that have been following Michigan State for long enough, not shocked by this. A week ago, it would have seemed a little bit unlikely to get all of their crap together inside of 31, 32 games. All their crap is not together, but a lot of it came together for this game with a big win over Big Ten co-champions Wisconsin down in Indianapolis.
Yeah, a couple things. First, Michigan State, when they win that first game, they rarely don't win the second game. You know, it's like when they in this Big Ten tournament now. I think three of the teams with double byes lost today, and I expected when Michigan State beat Maryland that they were going to win this game because I think Michigan State also matches up pretty good with Wisconsin. Obviously they beat them up in Madison, and also it was an 8-point game in East Lansing in a game that really wasn't played very well by Michigan State. So I thought Michigan State had a good chance to win this game. Mm-hmm. But the way the game transpired, when you looked at how difficult it was for Michigan State to score the basketball in this game, I thought they were going to have their work cut out for them. And the way they had to win this game by going inside and doing so frequently, that was the most impressive thing in my opinion.
Going inside, that's just part of Michigan State's balance, which in some ways has been a little unnerving and frustrating this year. Izzo talking about not having a go-to guy and all those things, although Tyson Walker certainly quarterbacked that thing at the end. He's comfortable and confident taking those big shots at the end. His teammates are confident in him. That gives him more belief, and he carries it out. But Izzo made an interesting point at the press conference earlier this week. He said, if you're playing against us, you're game planning against Michigan State, tell me who you're stopping. On one hand, Michigan State has no consistent go-to guy. On the other hand, if you're playing defense, do you come out and say, okay, we're stopping Gabe Brown and Max Christie, but then Julius Marble comes out, gets in the post, scores 3 points, or 3 field goals, 8 points in the first half, kind of carries them a little bit offensively in the first half. Michigan State missed some shots in the first half, but Wisconsin played really good defense in that first half. Neither team shot well. Everybody knows that, but Michigan State came out and shot 58% in the second half with a variety of guys cracking shots.
Yeah, the thing you say, like the pick your poison aspect of Michigan State, yeah, it's easy to say that. Mm-hmm. But if I told you ahead of time that Malik Hall was going to have the game that he had, then you're like, well, you talk about the inside game. Julius Marble can only play 20 minutes, right? So there's got to be someone else, and and Marble's not a great rebounder. So I think the significance of what Marcus Bingham did tonight is it's huge because he had 11 boards. He didn't take a single one of those stupid threes. And I know it's great when they go in, but Michigan State needs him more for rebounding than points. And when he's playing around the basket and running the floor like he did tonight, a completely different Michigan State team. If Marcus Bingham plays like that, and even the Maryland version of Marcus Bingham, he doesn't need to have the 20 points and 11 rebounds. But if he has anywhere near 11 rebounds and plays decent defense by his standards, or fundamentally sound defense within the Michigan State construct, Michigan State's a completely different team, and they can beat just about anyone they play on any given night.
Absolutely. We've said that a few times about Bingham. We said that on Sunday, I think, when they played Maryland at the Breslin Center. For various reasons, he didn't play a lot of minutes in that game as Michigan State tried to go small down the stretch in that game. But we said that's the Bingham they need. And I wrote something, I think, after that game saying that was the Joey Hauser that Michigan State needs. And Hauser came forward with a couple of big jump shots in this game, maybe 3 of them, 1 of 2 from three-point range, big three-pointer with about 8 minutes to go. Baseline inbound play, catch and shoot. Went to him after a timeout, drew up a play for him. Screen roll replace, another replace, a new down screen wrinkle, got him open for that one. That's something Michigan State I don't think has shown. They've shown screen roll replace all year, everybody does, but they added a little down screen to it. And when Izzo can come out of timeouts and go to Joey Hauser, That's just a nice card to have in your hand. Okay, we've been doing this with ball screens. We've been looking to post up. We've been trying to hit Christie. We've been trying to go Gabe Brown. Now let's go to Christie. And it's open when they go to it. It's not something they feature all the time, but it's there when they've needed it in a lot of occasions. I know Michigan State lost 7 of their last 10, but during that time, Hauser was coming along. And Bingham, I threw out a tweet out there that said, Tom Izzo's thrown a lot of fertilizer on Marcus Bingham in the last couple of weeks and in the last 4 years. And all that fertilizer is starting to produce some growth now. And this is the Bingham Izzo envisioned. This is why Izzo's been on his back all along to get to do all the things and play the right way and to get in the post and service that jump hook so the rest of his game could come around. And he was down there in the post to get a couple of big offensive rebounds. He scored 11 straight points personally. It began with a blitz counter break, fast break dunk after I think Brad Davison scored. And that transition dunk got him going for those 11 straight points. And Bingham is a guy that's taken that flack. There's a lot of critics around Michigan State basketball, maybe even some people in his camp that are wondering why and how Michigan State works, does Bingham the way they do in terms of limiting his minutes here and there. This was what he had in mind, and we've seen Izzo do this before and get this out of players. I know it's just 2 games in the Big Ten tournament, and there are no guarantees that Michigan State will win a game next week in the NCAA tournament. But if nothing else, you can see the method to the madness, what Izzo is trying to get out of him, and that's the Marcus Bingham Izzo's been trying to get, and this is a different team when they've got that guy starting at the 5.
Yeah, the one thing that you can point to, and I think that there's no counter argument to this, but when Michigan State was rolling coming into Big Ten play, when they were rolling pre-Bingham and Christie getting COVID, the reason they were rolling is because Marcus Bingham was accountable and playing the best basketball of his life in terms of fundamental assignment sound. Tonight, the last few games we've seen that from him, and it's been more than the last few games. You've seen the bits and pieces of him coming around, but he really did it in the last couple of games. And the thing about Marcus Bingham, you've been around Michigan State as much as we have with him in the program, is when he feels good about himself, he really gets on a roll. And he's feeling really good about himself, and he's feeling really good about his role within the program and about what he can do, with his God-given skill set. And I think you're going to see a even better version of Marcus Bingham than you saw in the first 2/3 or the first half of the season. That's when he was at his best. That's when Michigan State was really hard to beat. It was because of Marcus Bingham. Then you got Julius Marble coming off the bench and delivering big minutes as a role player. I think he really makes a lot of things work. I think the thing about the ball screen defense is so much better. Michigan State is, when Marcus Bingham is on the floor and he's playing the way he's played the last few games, Michigan State is a very, very, very good defensive team. And that was the best defense from start to finish that I've seen all season long.
I agree.
And Wisconsin runs good stuff.
Right in it and right into Johnny Davis. What was he, 3 out of 19? Johnny Davis, maybe not 100%. You'll talk about that in a moment here, Paul. But Johnny Davis didn't really use it as an excuse. The fact that he missed the late portions of Wisconsin's game against Nebraska on Sunday in the regular season finale. Greg Gard mentioned that he missed some practices and was maybe out of rhythm, had maybe a little bit of rust or something like that. Johnny Davis, no excuses. Michigan State played great defense on him. Interesting the way Michigan State had the rotation going. They began with Max Christie on him, and it was the old 6 eyes defense. Johnny Davis rules tonight. 6 eyes. Max had him up front. Then you had 2 eyes over each side of Max to help. Big men were attentive, flashing to help every time he caught the ball. And Gabe Brown did a good job anytime they had to switch. But it was Max Christie, and then Hogard would come in and guard him, and Max would go and guard Davison or someone else. Then when Max would sit, maybe Jaden Akins a little bit. Gabe Brown just a couple of times. One time Gabe Brown had him man-to-man with 2 minutes to go. Someone else missed a three-pointer, and that's when Gabe Brown got the big defensive rebound about 2 minutes to go. There's 1 or 2 other times when Gabe Brown had him, but not very often. It was usually Christie, and then Hogard, and a little bit of Akins. And a lot of help awareness all over the place. And that speaks right to what you were talking about 24 hours ago when you had a suspicion that Tom Izzo and Michigan State watched a little bit more of Wisconsin and prepared a little bit more for Wisconsin this week during practice week than they let on. Izzo acknowledged that they did work on Wisconsin a little bit on Monday going into the full weekend. You pointed out that Michigan State had played Maryland twice. They just played them on Sunday. That gave Michigan State a luxury of putting in a little bit more of Wisconsin, and there's no way Michigan State could have played that defense, that type of help, six-eyes defense against Johnny Davis, unless they put in some pretty good time on that this week. You're right about that with the Davis rules. But you saw Davis during pregame. What were your thoughts about that, and your thoughts about Michigan State versus Davis throughout the course of this game?
Yeah, I'm not going to go say he's 100%. I think that would be a disservice to him. He's a heck of a player, but I do think that he looked pretty good for given the circumstances, and I would go as far as saying that he used at least 85% in my opinion. I didn't see any evidence that there wasn't any lift on his jumper. I didn't see him limping around. I didn't see him babying anything. The kid's a gamer, and there are guys at this tournament that I've seen limping around and stuff like that. Guys that are nursing some injuries and whatnot. But Johnny Davis, I think it's almost certain that he wasn't 100%. But he doesn't have to be 100% to get the kind of treatment that Michigan State gave him and open things up for his teammates. I think of when Cassius Winston was at Michigan State and some other guys like him, that they may have been wearing down late in the season. They're still getting the same defensive treatment. And I thought Davis played pretty good tonight, and I thought Michigan State played pretty dang good against them. But 3 for 19, I think what I noticed a lot is State. There wasn't a lot of room on the 3-point attempts, and Michigan State did a nice job cutting off those driving angles, and like you mentioned a few minutes ago, all the help. But just I think throwing different puzzle pieces at them was impressive. And I think in the first couple meetings with Johnny Davis, you could point to, and Izzo would say, well, we did a really good job when this guy was on him. But I think as a team, Michigan State played really, really good defense on Johnny Davis, and they did so without allowing someone else to go hog wild. I think, in the first meeting, Stephen Crowell or whatever, maybe he had 15 points or whatever because he's left wide open. There wasn't any of those guys really going off in this game. Brad Davison had 23 points, but you expect that from him. He's the kind of dude that, he's going to make his shots count when they matter. But you didn't have Crowell going off for a huge amount. You didn't have Tyler Wall going off for 15 to 20 points. He had 8 points. So Michigan State did a really nice job defending Johnny Davis without sacrificing, without really opening themselves up to getting damaged by other guys.
And Michigan State now, Gabe Brown was talking this week about being locked in. He said that after the Maryland game. And that's what they were on defense. They were down, they were ready, they were focused, they were locked in on their assignments. There was no slippage there. They were all playing for the team. Gabe Brown, I don't know who's helping get this going, but this is a team that's had slippage throughout the course of the season in various ways. But now, in this game, you saw a rotation of players that are comfortable and competent within their roles. And each of them have some skills that can produce when the game comes to them. And it can morph into a pretty interesting team when you've got that point guard platoon going on, that power forward platoon. You're exactly right. Malik Hall didn't do much. Gabe Browning, Max Christie, that would have been the stat line that I would have been concerned with. If you'd have told me before this game that neither one of those guys would have hit a three-pointer, 0 for 2 combined, and 4 for 9, only 4 total field goals from those guys, I'm like, man, where are they going to get offense from? That's when you can't always bank on Hauser and Bingham and these other guys scoring, but the defense was so good, and the defense travels. I heard somebody say that defense is like dogs and offense is like cats. Cats just kind of come and go. Offense kind of comes and goes. But if you play good defense, it's like dogs. They're always there. They're loyal. They're consistent. Michigan State has not had that type of consistent dog defense in a while. But what they established for this game, I think they can continue to capitalize on that. And Paul, I saw the beginnings of this defense against Ohio State, believe it or not. When Ohio State jumped out to that 16-6 lead or whatever it was, Ohio State was scoring from range, but Michigan State had gotten driven. Ball screen defense was terrible against Michigan, terrible in a lot of ways. They were just kind of, deer in the headlights, and that was in that Michigan game in a lot of ways. They worked on it even though they were tired. They came out, they lost to Ohio State, but the communication on defense against Ohio State was better. The gap coverage was better, and I asked Izzo about that in the press conference the following Monday, and he acknowledged that the gap coverage was better. they gave up some shots, and you go back and look at those shots, they were contested. Okay, Ohio State hit some shots. Joey Brunt got hot or whatever. But the beginnings of this defense began in that Ohio State game. They're locked in now, but it wasn't just an 18-hour metamorphosis. It's been a process, and that defense, it's not quite Final Four defense. I won't say that, but it looked like bona fide Tom Izzo March defense today, inside and out, assignments, guys playing for the collective, nobody taking any 1-second vacations, and inside you had that rim protection from Bingham. Not only was he swift with his ball screen defense and his lateral movement as a help defender, but he was showing up at the right time as a help defender around the block elbow area, but also around the rim with those block shots, those consecutive block shots. I think against Johnny Davis in the first half, that was a tone setter, and that's just going to get that guy even more fired up as they move forward. That defense has been a work in progress, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has. But the fact that guys have know their roles, and then the other thing is the guys are coming in, and if they're not playing defense, they're coming back out. So like a guy like AJ Hogard's coming off the bench, and he's got to give it, otherwise he's coming out. Max Christie, if he's not giving it, then Jaden Akins is coming in. Same thing with Gabe Brown. So that defensive depth is really big, but the rim protection with Marcus Bingham is big, and the ball screen defense with him, and the thing he's gotten back to, and I don't know if it has anything to do with the block shots record or whatever, but he is not hunting blocks anymore.
Absolutely.
He's not slapping down.
Absolutely.
He's not slapping down with his hands, and
I think it does.
he's playing.
I think it does have something.
I
think it does have something to do with that block shot record being over, because he would jump out of his shoes too often and make the defense unsound. He's letting it come to him now.
Not only that, his hands are coming down like a middle hitter in volleyball, and that's the worst thing you can do as a shot blocker, because you're going to get called for so many fouls.
And Michigan State, there are fewer mistakes, not as many turnovers today. Izzo's still trying to tighten up on better shot selection, but guys are boxing out and rebounding, not turning it over. And therefore, guys are not coming out of their shift early due to mistakes. They're finishing their shifts. And so guys are coming in fresh bodies, one after another. That helps the defense, helps the transition game, helps the rebounding when guys are finishing their shifts without errors and guys are coming in rested. And it's a real nice rotation right now. Competent role players. And that two-headed monster there at point guard, I don't want to call it that. It's more like a platoon. But Hogard doing some things there. And then Michigan State went back to the two-point guard offense a little bit today. They got a little bit stuck with that because they had the two-point guards out there with Akins for a while. And then the defense doesn't have to get out on Akins or Hogard. And then you've got, Michigan State was trying to post up with those three guys in there, and there just was no room in the interior when they tried to do that. But a lot of role players playing with freshness and exuberant. As much as they've been through this year, man, they are really excited to keep rolling right now. And now, as far as Purdue goes, looks like Purdue's up by 6 with 15 seconds left, so it looks like that one's over. 69-61. So Michigan State's going to be taking on Purdue for the second time. They upset the Boilermakers in Breslin Center a couple of weeks ago. Christie played well in that game. Tyson Walker with the big one down the stretch. Edey, of course, was a horse down low. This is something interesting about this deal, Paul. And I noticed this against Maryland. Michigan State double-teamed the post against Maryland, a team that doesn't have great interior threat. And they were burned at the beginning of that game. They posted up, and Bingham kind of showed up to help, and Christie sagged down to help on Bingham's man, and they reversed the ball for, I think, Ayala for a three-pointer early in that game. Then they did like the first possession of the second half too. I'm like, Michigan State traditionally is not a team that likes to double team in the post. This year maybe to a fault. And they were doing it against Maryland. I thought that was kind of strange, kind of hurt them a little bit, whatever. Then they did it against Wisconsin, got some steals out of it, double-teamed the post, very active with it. My theory on this, Michigan State did not double-team the post against Purdue, and Edey went hog wild to an extent. They also had some turnovers trying to get it into him, but Michigan State against Purdue did not want to give up the threes. They wanted to play him single coverage, not give up threes. Did the same thing against Dickinson, did the same thing against Coburn of Illinois. And it worked against Purdue. It kind of almost worked for a while against Illinois. Did not work against Michigan in the second meeting. I don't know if they're going to double team the post now, but they certainly have worked on it in these two games, going against their normal mode of operation, against teams that don't really have great interior strength. They've worked on this double teaming of the post. Now the question is, will they do that against Edie? Something they did not do at all in the first game. Don't you think that's kind of interesting, Paul?
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. It gives Purdue one more thing to prepare for on a short turnaround situation. I think that Michigan State's becoming more and more multiple, but defensively, I think this is the time where you're going to throw some curveballs because people do know you so well, and I think there's been times where Michigan State's wanted to double the post against some teams. Now, I'd much rather getting taken apart with a guy like Edie scoring 2 points at a time and potentially getting tired and not being so effective down the stretch, because we've seen that from Purdue big men historically against Michigan State. I'd rather do that than get diced by Stefanovic or Jaden Ivey. But I think that it's kind of what do you expect, what do you seek type of thing. If this is the type of deal where Purdue isn't shooting well and they do have some tired legs and you're seeing the ball come off the front iron, I wouldn't be surprised if you see some double teams. If Purdue's shooting hot, I wouldn't from the outside I wouldn't expect it. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting deal all around with Purdue in general, because I think Purdue is kind of a deep team. One of the deeper teams in the Big Ten, and they're the only team with a double bye that made it through in this tournament. So, Michigan State's going to have to rely on his depth, and they're going to have to set the tone early if they want to get through to Sunday.
First time they played, A.J. Hogard played defense, primary defender on Jaden Ivey. First time that Hogard had the sombrero, as Jeff Stoutland used to say. He was the guy wearing the hat. They don't do that for Michigan State basketball, and they don't do it for Michigan State football anymore. But anyway, he was the guy that had the main defensive primary assignment, and he guarded Ivey. He was excited about it. And that was the day we began to see a different side of A.J. Hogard defensively. Saw shades of it a little bit tonight. I'm assuming Hogard will begin this game on Ivey again. He'll be fired up to do it. Third game in 3 days for him and the Michigan State team, but this is an area in which Michigan State's depth can help a little bit, help them to possibly win a third game in 3 days. Hogard against Ivey, we seeing that one again, Paul? What are your thoughts on Ivey coming back? Because Ivey's going to be buckled in for this one now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big deal. This is a big deal for Purdue. You've got both teams from Indiana in the semis, and this is a Purdue team that probably should have won the Big Ten this year but didn't. Right? So this is their chance. This is their chance to get a little bit of redemption, get a hang a banner, so to speak. And as well as I do, anytime Michigan State and Purdue play, it's usually a pretty good scrap. So I don't know which point guard for Michigan State is going to show up. Michigan State needs both of them to show up, but chances are that Hogard's going to do a nice job in this one, and he's got to be feeling pretty good about himself because he was able to contribute tonight in a meaningful way, unlike last night. Last night he wasn't as good as he was tonight. So I think both point guards are doing some really good things. Michigan State hasn't really had a situation where they've had 2 point guards playing at a fairly high level in quite a while.
No.
But it's interesting. It's like maybe some of those games were before Appling got hurt. Keith Appling, when Travis Trice was kind of doing some things, but Tyson Walker is really, because he's not scoring 20 points a night, maybe he doesn't get any notice, but he is really starting to come on, I think, and feeling good about himself. And tonight you saw some good assist numbers on a night where there weren't a whole lot of assists. 7 assists, 0 turnovers from Tyson Walker on a night where Michigan State only had 11 assists. So that's what I would call a good night.
11
assist wise.
Absolutely. 11. Go ahead.
Yeah, 7 assists out of 11. Pretty good night for Tyson Walker.
11 points, 7 assists, 5 out of 7 from the free throw line. Michigan State 58% in the second half, only 1 turnover in the second half. 58% in the second half shooting against Wisconsin, only 1 turnover in the second half. If you're playing that type of efficient offense with the type of mindful, well-rounded, deep defense that Michigan State played in this game, that's a headache for somebody. I don't know if they'll play a third straight solid game here against Purdue, but that's a mixture. And, the Maryland game, take away the last 2 minutes with the problems with the inbound plays. That was a little bit, off-Broadway, outlier, fluky type. I mean, it almost cost them the game. That's part of basketball. But the first 38 minutes of that game, first 35 minutes of that game, Michigan State played really well, led by 20 against the decent team that was playing hard. My point right now is That's, two straight. I would call the Maryland game, I think Michigan State, that was maybe not a complete game, but they played really well for long stretches. I would say this is 2 straight good games by Michigan State. And I'm not sure when Michigan State has played consecutive quality games. I think January 2nd and 5th against Northwestern and Penn State early in the Big Ten season against, average competition at the time are 2 games I'd say, they played pretty good back-to-back. Now they've done it first time in a long time, and it's a Michigan State team that is getting their crap together. Michigan State fans got to be pretty excited about this. I know a lot of Michigan State fans. I heard Michigan State fans a week and a half ago saying they were done with this team, done with this season. I had a little bit of a rant on this show 2 weeks ago, going through 25 straight years of NCAA tournament when there's programs like Indiana that are dying and scratching to try to get in. And I talked about North Carolina State and Louisville and some others that have had some struggles. And, the fact that Purdue's only been to one Final Four in 52 years. One Final Four in 52 years for Purdue. And Michigan State, with their 25 straight NCAA tournament appearances, has fans that are tired of watching this team. Well, I hope the people that said that are no longer watching this team because they don't deserve to be watching this team. So
no, they're still out there. They're still out there watching.
I know they are. They jumped back on the bandwagon. They gave up on them 2 weeks ago, but they're back.
No, they didn't jump back on the bandwagon. They're the same ones posting in the first half talking about how terrible the offense is. Not really. I get it. Michigan State fans are entitled. They're spoiled, and frankly, their team deserves better than what they're given because I think they're part of the problem at times. You hear the collective gasp of horror when someone misses a free throw in the Breslin Center or a team goes on a run. It's part of basketball, guys. And, I think these guys are, they don't have an alpha on the team, but they're scrapping, they're playing hard, and they're playing their best basketball at the right time of season. And, no one's going to want to draw Michigan State in the NCAA tournament.
No, you could win with this type of mixture. You could win. You're still going to need Christie and Brown to score. You can't, they didn't go hunting for their shots wisely tonight, but you're going to need those wings to produce. But it's a team that if you're overplaying one way, they can hit you with Hauser or Bingham or Marble in the first half and get some things done as long as that defense and rebounding comes along. That's what we were saying a month ago. That a month ago, Michigan State's defense and rebound were struggling, and if it wasn't the usual Izzo defense and rebounding team, then you had to make your shots because it had kind of become a finesse offensive team. And at that point, Gabe Brown and Max Christie were cold, so they weren't beating anybody. But now the defensive rebounding is coming back. And Bingham is dialed in. You get those 2 wings shooting pretty well, and the point guard's getting straightened out. Michigan State's a handful. And right now, coming into tonight, Michigan State was projected to be a number 8 seed. I've not looked at the bracketology. I've got to believe that this victory could move Michigan State up to the number 7 line. And it's a big difference usually. Big difference usually between being a number 7 and number 8 or a 9. This year, I don't know if it's as much of a difference, but I think you'd gladly rather be a 7 than an 8 or a 9.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is the selection committee, there's some potential really good-looking matchups if Michigan State gets through that first weekend as a 7. They love the Duke-Michigan State matchup, and that would be in line for the 7-10. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is, I don't want to be too sunshine and rainbows because I do still think that one weakness of this team is defensive rebounding, and that weakness is going to govern how far Michigan State can go in the NCAA tournament. You look at how well they played on defense in the first half tonight, and Wisconsin was within 2 points at halftime. That's simply because Michigan State gave up 8 offensive rebounds in that first half. And Wisconsin's not a great rebounding team. So if Michigan State much better in the second half rebounding. If that second half version of Michigan State that rebounds with Marcus Bingham around the basket shows up, then this team is a very dangerous team in the month of March.
Tom Izzo in the NCAA tournament retired Rick Majerus. He also retired John Chaney. He essentially retired Jerry Tarkanian. Are you thinking what I'm thinking, Paul?
Yeah, I've thought about that too. I saw you post that on the message board, but I did think about that a couple times.
That'd be something. If Michigan State is a number 7 seed in the second round, you'll play a number 2 seed. And some of the new 2 seeds being projected right now are Baylor, Duke, Kansas, and maybe Purdue. They won't be slated with Purdue to play in the second round. They'll keep them apart from one another. So it most likely, if Michigan State's a 7, it's Baylor, Duke, or Kansas. Michigan State has already played Baylor and Kansas. Michigan State would be an underdog, but they wouldn't be afraid of any of those teams. Now, Baylor was great in November. I think Baylor might have been the best team in the country in November when Michigan State played them. That was 2 injuries ago. Everyday John is gone, and Cryer is questionable. And so Baylor, I mean, they're an excellent team, but they're a little more thin than they have been in the past. And Kansas is up and down, but they handled Michigan State at Madison Square Garden. You and I were there back in November. I heard some interesting things about Baylor. Baylor lost to Oklahoma, and a lot of people think it was good for Baylor to lose because they do have a short bench and they needed some rest. Brad Underwood of Illinois today, Andy Katz interviewed him down there with you in Indianapolis, and I posted this on the board. Underwood said they feel good about losing that game. They want to go home and get rested, and Underwood told Katz last year they won the Big Ten tournament, and he felt that his team was exhausted and just dead for their first-round game against Loyola, a very good Loyola team, and Loyola beat Illinois. But I remember watching that game and saying, man, Illinois does not look right. They're not nearly as – they lost a lot of their quickness in that game, and I thought Ohio State was the same way when they lost to Oral Roberts or North Texas or whoever it was that Ohio State played. I think a lot of Big Ten teams last year going through that 20-game Big Ten schedule, not every team played 20 games, but – they condensed that long Big Ten schedule into a short amount of time. And the Big Ten last year, 1 through 14, everybody was good, and they just wore each other out. They got in the tournament, and the Big Ten tanked. Izzo's coached for 27 years, and he said last year, top to bottom, was the best the Big Ten's ever been. But I do think that the way the season came about, it wore everybody down. And that's the first time I've heard Brandon Underwood talk about that on the record. Underwood's happy that they played one game, they went home, they're resting. Baylor's happy they went home, they played one game, they're resting. It's good for some teams, maybe not good for others. This is a good run for Michigan State because they're still in the process of figuring out who's what and gaining confidence and gaining some of the, still working on their on-the-court chemistry. So these wins are good, but they've already established what they can be. I don't think it would be a terrible thing if Michigan State goes out, plays well, loses to Purdue by 5 points, and gets home. Now, Izzo's going to try to chase it would be his 8th Big Ten tournament championship. And, but if you win the Big Ten tournament championship, it doesn't help your seeding because the committee has shown year after year that they finish the brackets before the Big Ten championship game is over. The Big Ten championship game a lot of times is meaningless. They have set the brackets, and whoever wins or loses that thing, it doesn't change much. To extend yourself to win that thing, to maybe try to play yourself into a 6 or 5 seed or 6 seed, might not be worth it. Other than the glory of doing it, they do raise a banner at Breslin now if you win a Big Ten tournament championship. Although they do it behind the scenes, they don't do it in public. Maybe next year they would. I don't know. But one more good defensive game. Get Brown and Christie going again. Keep Bingham going. And say Purdue comes out, plays really well, you lose by 5, go home. That's not a bad scenario for Michigan State, in my opinion, Paul, rather than playing on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is if you do play on Sunday, let's say you happen to get past Purdue, which I don't think is going to happen. But if they did, then they're playing a team that also played just as many games as they did. So it's not like they're playing a super fresh team. But
are you talking about? You talking about Sunday or tomorrow?
Sunday. I'm saying if they were.
I'm looking ahead to playing.
But
Duke.
I'm
talking about playing Duke in 8 days. Is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Don't play on
I agree
Sunday.
with you.
It'll help you beat Duke in 8 days if you don't play on Sunday this week. It's my theory.
I agree, and I think there's a lot of validity to that. But you know how Tom Izzo is; he's gonna, they're not gonna tank it.
No, they won't take it.
But we'll see what happens. I do think that these wins, I think they needed to see themselves win multiple games in a row. I think that was big. This team is feeling good about itself, and that's what they needed. They needed to get their swag back, and they got it. But I should probably get rolling because I got to get through here.
Sounds great. I appreciate your help. Do we know what time the game is tomorrow? I don't even know.
It's the second game, so that would be the first game is at 1:00. So it would be 25 minutes after the completion of the first game,
like around 4:00 or so.
So you're looking at around 3:30.
All right, man. How's the food down there? Are they feeding you guys?
Yeah, it wasn't very good.
Okay.
It reminded. I got to tell you, we had fish tonight, and it reminded me all the times when I was 11 years old. My mom left me at home and said, "Fend for yourselves." Left me with a bag of tater tots and Gordon's fish sticks.
It's a good way to do it, man. Sink or swim. Feeding the press area is kind of is that coming back into style now? We didn't have that for a while, but we're full on March Madness now.
You know what? I realized I didn't miss it that much.
All right, man. Paul, appreciate your help. Check out his 321 at SpartanMag.com later tonight, late night, or Saturday morning. My hoop feed is already over there at SpartanMag.com. Check that out. Also, the Izzo postgame press conference right here at SpartanMag YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up here. Subscribe to this channel. We appreciate having you around. Go over to SpartanMag.com. Consider becoming a subscriber over there. Become a magger. We'd like to have you over there. There goes Paul Kondak. Thanks a lot, Paul. Talk to you soon. Great job, man. Thank you.
Yep. Take care, Jim.
All right. There goes associate editor of SpartanMag.com, the venerable Paul Konendijk, the Colossus of Clout, Paul Konendijk. Great to work with that man. Great to have him. So anyway, let's go over here and check. Thanks for give us a thumbs up over there. It's good to see more of the crowd is filing in as we get toward midnight. Come on in, file in. Be nice, behave yourselves, be good to one another. It's March Madness. It's okay to be a little bit cranky. It's okay to be a little bit giddy, a little bit happy. And if you disagree with me, if you just want Michigan State to win out and just keep going full bore, that's great. I'm not sure. Michigan State has gotten into that Big Ten tournament before, not as deep as this Michigan State team, and it's been better for them to win one, lose one, go home. This team's a little deeper, and they're still learning their way, learning their path. Malik Hall passed up a three-pointer today. I think Mark Montgomery was upset about that. You want to get him going. You want all these guys to get going. Now, not everybody can score 15 points. You can't have 10 guys score 15 points. That'd be 150 points. That never happens, right? Not even Iowa can do that. So it's impossible for everybody to score 15 points. But I got to say, man, 58% in the second half, the way Michigan State was executing things, screening, drawing up plays on the sideline and showing some new wrinkles. That baseline inbound play to Hauser, that screen roll-up replaced with a down screen for Hauser also. Some new stuff there was good. Tyson Walker, ball in his hand, creating. It's nice to have a guy at the end of the day, if the chalk doesn't work, a guy that can just go into his back pocket and create something. That was great. Gabe Brown forced one shot early in the game from the left corner, and Izzo told him, "Man, you forced that. We don't need you doing that." And Gabe Brown didn't do that anymore, which is good. Just all around, but that defense, man, the defense. They were down, they were ready, they were aware, they were communicating, they were arriving to help, they were shrinking the gaps and arriving. Block shots, block elbow coverage, rim protection, all of it was excellent. Nice job by Michigan State. Let's go over here to the comments section. I'll take a couple of calls if you guys want to do that, if anyone feels compelled. You don't have to, but I'll open it up just in case someone wants to. I don't think we'll have any Michigan trolls tonight. I'm sure they're in a corner somewhere sucking their thumbs. But they're Americans, most of them. And even those that aren't, we love them too. It's just basketball, right? It's just football. 616-439-1158. All right. Brian V wants to cut down a net on Sunday. It would do wonders for the morale. You're right. It would be great for the morale. Just wouldn't want to play Sunday, Thursday. I've always said that over the years. You don't want to play Sunday and then come back and play on Thursday. I know there's exceptions, like the time UConn won 5 games and then won the national championship, but that team had Kemba Walker. I don't know how UConn that year was 9-9 in the Big East. They needed to win. They needed to go on a roll in the Big East tournament to get in that year. What year was that? 2012? I can't remember. But Kemba Walker, NBA All-Star, multi-year NBA veteran. He led the nation in scoring for a Jim Calhoun team. And how that team was 9-9, I'll never know. But they got hot and he carried them. That's the one exception. There's others. But, last year everybody was excited because Georgetown went on a run like that and won the Big East tournament, but I can't remember how they ended up doing in the actual tournament. Let me, just out of curiosity, I'll look that up. But I've talked about it over the years, and a lot of times my memory takes me back to early 2000s for some of those examples. One of the more prime examples was a year that Ohio State won the Big Ten tournament, one of the first Big Ten tournaments, on a Sunday, and they got shipped out west on a Thursday and got upset by Utah State in the first round. The Sunday-Thursday turnaround is difficult. Yeah, okay, so last year Georgetown goes on that run, wins the Big East tournament. Oh, they're the hot team. They're this, they're that. Hello. 4 days later, they play Colorado. They lose 96-73. Good night. Thanks for playing. Iowa. Did Iowa win the Big Ten tournament that one year? And then 4 days later, that was 2005. They lost to Northeastern State in the first round. Do you remember that? I don't know if Iowa won the Big Ten tournament or lost in the Big Ten tournament title game. But it was Sunday, Thursday turnaround, out. There's other examples of teams. If you're good enough to handle it, that's one thing. But if you're a little bit faulty, I think rest is important too for a lot of teams. Other teams can handle it, like Arizona, that is going to keep winning. I don't know if they won tonight, but they've got a lot of legs, racehorse. It's just the Pac-12, whatever. Kentucky, it'll be interesting to see how Kentucky does going forward. Popular pick to win it all. They might be strong enough to win a conference tournament and just keep trugging along. Not sure Michigan State's in that category. So it's debatable whether or not what's better. It's not like we've got any control over it on what we root for. It's just something to keep an eye on. All right, let's go over here and take a roll call. Old Tuck from Austin, Texas. He's coming in first. He's down low. The bell cow is here. He says, Eric M. says, hey, count, checking in from Roswell, Georgia. Brian Bemis, No Iris, and Old Tuck. No Iris is a new starter for us, making the starting five for the first time. We've got Old Tuck down in the middle. Eric M. running the point. Brian Bemis is on one wing. No Iris, the other wing. And we've got Mr. Bone Man as the stretch four. Good to have him here. Brian Bemis is Savage Spartan Squad. He's here. That's his name over at SpartanMag.com. SpartanMag.com, that is the source for Michigan State sports. Football, basketball, analysis, recruiting, web community extraordinaire of Michigan State fans from all over the globe. Have a lot of fun over there. And if you don't know what this nonsense is all about, go over to SpartanMag.com, check it out, become a subscriber. Underground Bunker on the Final Forum, the two finest message boards in the history of Spartan mankind. Old Tuck says, I run the counter break and shoot the three like Jack Sigma. I'm not sure Sigma shot the three a lot, did he? He had that Sigma, what do we have, that Sigma move along the baseline, that reverse pivot. Nowitzki does a little bit of that too. Someone else I saw had the Sigma shot. I'm kind of surprised that more people don't do that one. Maybe it's harder than we think. Brian Bemis says he loves the Supersonics reference. Jack Sigma. I think Sigma was better before the perm. Just an editorial comment, that's all. Old Tuck from Ludington, Michigan. Tom up to his old tricks. Is it too early to say that? I think he is up to his old tricks, just because they got their crap together and they've done this thus far. You can just see that they are a better team. I don't know if they'll go much further than this. There's no guarantees they'll win a game or two next week, but anytime that there's buzz about Izzo doing it again, it's no joke. It's no fluke. Last year, Michigan State defeated 3 top 5 teams in the last week and a half. They beat Ohio State, Illinois, and Michigan when they're all top 5 teams in order to get into the NCAA tournament to prolong their 25 straight years of making the NCAA tournament or whatever it was, 25 straight years. And didn't go any further. Izzo was not happy about being in the first 4. He thinks they should have been a little bit further along. But some of those conference tournament upsets, like Georgetown getting that bid in the Big East, Oregon State getting a surprise bid in the Pac-12, that put them into the tournament, and it didn't put them in the first 4. Oregon State and Georgetown were not in the first 4. It bumped Michigan State and UCLA down to the first 4, and Izzo could never really understand why or how that is. So they play UCLA. UCLA goes to the Final Four, but obviously UCLA barely got into the tournament. Michigan State led UCLA by 13 points in the first half. UCLA, good team, got hot. Michigan State blew a free throw box out late in the game by Aaron Henry. Did Michigan State get a little tired in that game? I don't know if they got a little tired, but coming down the stretch, everybody in the Big Ten, like I said earlier, I think Big Ten teams last year went into the NCAA tournament a little bit low on fuel. But even with Michigan State losing in the first 4 last year, they still created some buzz with the way they finished, beating 3 top 5 teams in the last week and a half. So even though they didn't go anywhere in the NCAA tournament, it still created some of that buzz. You're going to have to hope that Michigan State goes somewhere in the NCAA tournament this year, something that a week and a half ago not many people, even Michigan State fans, gave much of a chance of happening. But there's a chance now, especially if Max Christie plays like he did against Maryland and Gabe Brown plays like he was efficient against Maryland. Get this Marcus Bingham, Joey Hauser playing his role coming up, and they're running plays for him as a go-to guy here and there in the middle of the game, and Tyson Walker finishing it out. Hogard, man. Hogard is a glue guard right now, playing defense, checking in, playing defense, guarding Johnny Davis. He'll be guarding Ivey on Saturday like he did a couple of weeks ago when they upset Purdue. hit an open jumper from 14 feet in the last 5 minutes. A big field goal Michigan State needed down the stretch. Good defense, executing that half-court offense. A couple of those lobs to Marcus Bingham. Hogard doing some good stuff. Defensive glue, some passes here and there. Aggressive drive when it came up open to him. Like I said yesterday, Izzo still trying to get him to recognize when he should go for his job, when he should go for his shot, and when he should drive to kick. And he's trying to be mindful of that. You're seeing some good interaction between Izzo and Hogard, which is good because it needs to be ironed out a little bit for next year. There's some wrinkles there that need to be ironed out, so that's progress with Hogard. And you may have noticed, I was tweeting about this and mentioned it in the live in-game thread, when Joey Hauser got his second foul late in the first half, and Malik Hall got his second foul late in the first half. Both of those guys, 2 fouls, and Izzo does not like to play players when they've got 2 fouls in the first half. So both of your power forwards had to sit. So I'm like, okay, what's Michigan State going to do? They had Gabe Brown out there with Hogard and Max Christie, and I don't know who the other guard was. Might have been Akins, might have been Walker. I'm not sure. I assumed Gabe Brown was going to be the 4 because he's 6'8". Michigan State has the ball on offense. They run their set. They got some weave action going, and Hogard is there like at the high post, and Brown's over here on the wing. So Wisconsin's 2 big men. I don't know who Michigan State had out there as a big man, whatever it was, Bingham or Marble, doesn't matter. They got 2 big men out there. One guy's guarding Bingham, the other guy's guarding Brown because they're assuming he's the 4. They look at the bench, who's the 4? And the Wisconsin coaches say 44 is Gabe Brown. He's the 4, guard him. Brown goes out on the wing, so Wisconsin's other big goes out on the wing with Brown, which clears the lane. Hogard was running the 4, was playing the 4. He's playing in the post. And I can't remember if they did a ball screen with him or not. I think they did a ball screen. They got a slip to Bingham right down the lane layup. Michigan State only had like 7 field goals in the first half, right? Shot terribly in the first half. Everybody knows it, first half. But that was the easiest basket they got all night. Mainly because Michigan State came out with a freak lineup, and Wisconsin guarded it wrong because Michigan State's never had that lineup all year. They haven't used Hogard as a power forward all year. They did it on that one, got an easy basket. Wisconsin discovered it a couple minutes later. They ran a ball screen. Johnny Davis with the 4-man. So Hogard's up there playing ball screen defense with Akins. I think it was Akins. I don't know, one of the guards. Might have been Christie. I don't know. But it was Hogard was up there guarding the 4, and now it's a ball screen. So now you've got a 1-4 ball screen. So Hogard has to play it like a big man. And they kind of followed the ball screen. They get a layup. So Wisconsin wised up to it after 1 or 2 possessions. They attacked it. Then the next time they tried to attack it again, that time Hogard just switched on to Davis. Instead of doing like a hedge help recover or, up and under or over or jam it and behind, instead of doing your usual big man, small man, ball screen defense, which they never do because Hogard never plays the 4, they just said straight switch on that, which they should have done earlier. So that was kind of an interesting thing that Michigan State did when those 2 guys were in foul trouble. Went to Hogard, got a basket out of it, and Wisconsin was a little fouled up for a moment, but then Wisconsin adjusted, and Michigan State should have switched that one automatically the first time around. I don't know if that had been communicated or he forgot or what, but Michigan State got through the first half, led at halftime. Michigan State remains undefeated this year, went leading at halftime. And Hall and Hauser go to the second half with only 2 fouls apiece. And then, as Izzo said, if you go over to the press conference and watch that here on SpartanMag.com YouTube channel, Izzo said he had a come to the big fella meeting with Bingham at halftime. Bingham, Stevens, Izzo really jumped into Bingham's grill. And Izzo lore and Izzo history is full of halftime challenges of players, going all the way back for years and years and years, various players. You can only do it every once in a while. He can't do that every single game, then players tune him out. Tonight, Bingham got it. And Izzo said, we're going to go to him. He told at the halftime interview with Andy Katz, he said we have to go inside to Bingham, which they did. They went inside the first 3 possessions against Maryland last Sunday. Maryland was ready for it, a couple of missed shots. Maryland got some runouts. Maryland got some momentum early in the second half that helped bring them back in the regular season finale. This time, Michigan State likes to establish the post player, especially early in the second half. So Izzo said they were going to do that. They always do that. They come out and they move Bingham out and they run a curl for Gabe Brown. He goes right down the lane for an easy layup. So Izzo with a little head fake there, saying we're going to go to Brown, or we're going to go to Bingham, we're going to go to Bingham, we're going to go to Bingham, we're going inside, we got to go inside. Not in the first possession. They ran a curl for Brown and snuck 2 points out of there. Helped get them going a little bit. Jumped into Bingham. Bingham scores, 13 points in the second half, including 11 straight to get Michigan State going midway through the second half. 11 straight points for Bingham. Blitz, counter, break, dunk. And then had hook shot, then a couple of putbacks. One was an and one, getting fouled. Then he had a big hook shot, beautiful hook shot with about 5 minutes left. What was that one? It's such a good one, I got to look it up. Yeah, this is last night. Anyway, you saw the game. I'm not going to look it up. But Bingham, they got into Bingham and he responded. Izzo's been on Bingham's back for a long time. Everybody knows that. But you have to do it in a way that makes the guy like it somehow. Gene Cady was really good at that, they said, over the years. But got on Bingham, and Bingham, would get angry at himself a little bit, but they never lost Bingham, and he showed up tonight. All right, what do we have here? Mr. Boneman from Harper Woods. Dog Kenneth is here. That's good. We got over 100 people here as we go toward midnight. People getting excited about March Madness, that's for sure. Eric M. says, we made it to the weekend. Rob Sal says, what's up, fellas? Slim Pickens is from Bradenton, Florida, says the guys looked pretty good tonight. Defense was excellent. Go green. What was the defense overall? Let's check and see what Wisconsin had. Wisconsin shot for the game 36% from the field for Wisconsin. 36% from the field. Paul made a good point, though. Wisconsin with 8 offensive rebounds in the first half. Can't have that. He's right about defensive rebounding for Michigan State needs to be good. Michigan State's defense was good in the first half. Defensive rebounding at times was good. It was really good most of the game against Maryland, but it needs to stay good against Purdue on Saturday. Glenn Playlist says this was the toughest we've played in a long time. Players play tough, players win. I would agree with that 100%. It looked like Izzo March basketball, did it not? Spunky181 says looks like we're playing Purdue. Jim McKay, 6-man-1, says Bingham had a great game. Happy to see that. I would agree. Spunky181. Glenn Playlist says, where did Hogard at the 4 come from? Interesting twist. I just mentioned that a few minutes ago. I'm glad you noticed that. Maybe you saw it on Twitter when I was talking about it or in the in-game thread. But they did it because of the foul trouble. Now, late in the Ohio State game, Michigan State played Pierre Brooks at the 4. And that's something they're going to be looking at in the future, next year and so forth. He's a good shooter. He's got some strength. He can play some post defense against bigger guys. But also he's got some of that shot-making skill out on the perimeter. If he plays the 4, he'll be guarded by a 4, which gives him a quickness advantage and some offensive creativity. It's not something that they're going to want to major in maybe a whole lot, but Pierre Brooks at the 4 could be happening. I talked to Izzo about that last week, and he was talking about, they used Torbert at the 4, something I've mentioned in the past. When Torbert was a junior, in 2004, Torbert played a lot at the 4 because Michigan State had a lot of guards and a shortage of big men. And they kind of played a small lineup, and Torbert played the 4, was guarded by 4s a lot, so he had a lot of room, and he led the Big Ten in three-point shooting percentage that year. And Izzo quoted that about Torbert when talking about what Pierre Brooks can become in the future. YT Sparty says, Marble is not getting enough credit. Guys playing like a monster. I agree. Marble comes out, scores 8 points in the first half, carries Michigan State in the first half offensively when everybody else on the team was really struggling, and Wisconsin was playing good defense. Michigan State feeding the post, going to work, hook shots, 17-foot face-up jumper for him has been good all year. Michigan State needed those points, and, Marble, that's what you want. If you can go to the bench and bring that guy off the bench as a junior, a guy that can make some shots and do some things on defense, that's a plus reserve coming off the bench at that position. I don't know if he was ever comfortable being a starter when they moved him to the starting lineup. What was it, for the Purdue game? He said he was nervous prior to that, and then after that, his light kind of went off a little bit. Did not play well against Michigan. In one of the other games, Ohio State, I guess, move him back to a bench role. Bingham had kind of gotten the reset button, learned his lesson a little bit. He was ready to go back into the starting lineup. And Bingham and Hauser, so Hauser starts again, because Bingham and Hauser are kind of a platoon. And, Hall and Marble are kind of a platoon. They're kind of separate tag teams. Although in this game, late in the game, they mixed it up a little bit and played key moments with Bingham and Hauser together. Everybody's just getting comfortable, got some cards, and they're playing cards, and those cards are coming through for them right now. It's only a couple of games, but it is encouraging. Jim McKay, 6-man, says Harbaugh's playing well. He's making his free throws, too. What was Michigan State from the foul line today? Wisconsin struggled at the foul line. Wisconsin was 12 out of 21 from the foul line. Michigan State, 18 out of 24. But, they only missed 6 shots from the free throw line, but every time you miss one, it seems expensive, doesn't it? Was it Malik Hall went 0 for 2 at the free throw line there late in the first half, and Tyson Walker missed the front end of a one-on-one late in the first half. But 18 of 24 overall, Michigan State outshot Wisconsin at the foul line. Michigan State doing a good job drawing fouls and getting to the free throw line, something they've not done a great job of in recent weeks. Chris Martinez says this team is unselfish to a fault. Rather have a subpar shot than the mind-numbing turnover. Good point, and Michigan State had a problem with turnovers during a little spat in this game, but then they got over it. Only 1 turnover in the second half. There's a happy median in there somewhere where the shot selection is not too wonky and you're not, turning down a decent shot, 3 more passes later, turnover. I hear what you're saying. If they can come out of that, they might have something. But that, they're striving for excellence. And in Izzo's world, they're not going to achieve excellence with questionable shot selection. Now, when Michigan State's offense was having trouble a month ago or last week, shot selection was a problem because they were passing it around, and some people, sometimes Gabe Brown thought he was the guy that was supposed to go to work and create something. Sometimes Christie thought he was supposed to be the guy. Ended up with a lot of sloppy attempts. You're seeing less of that now. YT Sparty says Izzo has said the Big Ten tournament isn't as good as a regular season title. Yes, he has said that, and I would agree with him. Jim McKay, 6-man 1, says Indiana's been playing good too. They certainly came back against Michigan, which surprised me. Indiana can turn up that defensive pressure. When they upset Purdue in the regular season back in January, they were playing physical defensive pressure out, half-court pressure, like excellent. I was like, man, that's for real. Then they played Michigan in Bloomington a few days later, and they didn't replicate it at all, and Michigan won easily. Michigan State played Indiana a couple weeks after that. Michigan State won. That's when Michigan State showed the beginnings of some physicality in that game. And Izzo thought they'd, kind of crossed a bridge on that. And then they went out, and I think they lost to Penn State, and they were not strong at all, gave up a big lead. And I asked Izzo after that Penn State game if he was surprised, if he thought that Michigan State had harnessed a level of physicality and intensity in that Indiana game, and surprised that they didn't show it in the next game against Penn State. I didn't even get a chance to finish my question. Izzo interrupted me and said shocked. He was shocked that Michigan State did not have a carryover from the physicality they showed against the physical Indiana team at home, did not carry over to that loss at Penn State. Indiana's been so inconsistent, except their shooting has been consistently poor. They're not a good shooting team. I don't know how they've shot in these 2 games that they've won against Illinois and Michigan, but that defensive pressure that they showed against Purdue when they won in West Lafayette a month and a half ago, they came up with that again in the second half. I saw that same defensive pressure for them in the second half against Michigan. Handcuffed them. They got on a roll. They're feeling it right now, trying to get into the tournament. They've not been in the tournament much in recent years. So they're fired up about that. They're winning against Illinois today. Probably puts them in, and it kind of hurts Michigan's chances just a little bit. Rutgers lost. If Rutgers had won, that would have hurt Michigan's chances a little bit also. Did Virginia Tech win? Because Virginia Tech's a team I think is trying to get in. I don't know if, Wake Forest with a loss is probably not looking so good now. Let's see what Virginia Tech was beating North Carolina. Let's see if they still are, or if they did. Arkansas beat LSU. Houston won. A&M won against Auburn, so A&M is in. Texas A&M beat Auburn, so A&M is in. That hurts Michigan a lot. I think A&M is in now. They had that, their game against Florida was kind of a loser leave town match. Now they knock off Auburn. That is significant. I can't find the North Carolina game. No. What the heck? There it is. North Carolina lost. So Virginia Tech won. So Virginia Tech's been on the fence, I think. So that helps Virginia Tech, which also hurts Michigan. Michigan's chances are not looking good now. All right, let's go over here. Slim Pickens says all the Big Ten tournament does is give a team a chance to improve their big dance chances. Jim McKay says, yep, gives them a few good games to get primed for the big dance. I agree with that, but you don't want to leave it all there for the reasons I mentioned a minute ago. There have been times in the past when I thought Michigan State would do well to play one game, win one, lose one, go home, especially when they've been tired at the end of the year. This year, they haven't been that tired. I'm talking about past teams that have had injuries at the end of the year and so forth. But they've taken strides here. This has been a success. They're a better team now. The morale is good. I'll say it again. You lose to Purdue by 5 points on Saturday. Get back to East Lansing, rest up on Sunday, drink all the right fluids, eat all the right vegetables, watch the brackets come out, get a good night's sleep, do a little walkthrough, have a nice practice on Monday. It's a lot different than that. Those extra 24 hours are key, because if you play on Sunday, you get home Sunday night, everybody's tired, brackets come out Monday, you go over a little bit of film, you might walk through on Monday, and if you're scheduled to play on Thursday, you probably have like a creaky practice on Tuesday, and you travel on Tuesday. You're gone. Then you're there on Wednesday for the public practice, then you get beat on Thursday and go back home. It's a big difference than having that Sunday off, because you don't know if you're going to get scheduled for Thursday or not. If you get scheduled for Friday, you're okay. That one year that Michigan State lost to Louisville in the Sweet 16 in Phoenix, Michigan State was number 1 seed, Draymond Green's senior year. That team was good, but they were kind of thin. Was that the year when Brandon Dawson was injured? Last game of the regular season, they were blowing out Ohio State. He got injured and then ended up losing that game. They were looking good. They were looking the best they had looked all year. Then they circled the wagons, won the Big Ten tournament. Brandon Wood played a little bit better. Austin Thornton played a little bit better, shorter lineup, and really gutted it out and went in as a number 1 seed. A lot of people were picking Michigan State as a favorite to win the national championship. A very emotional win on a Sunday, I think maybe against Ohio State for the Big Ten tournament championship. Exhausting game on a Sunday. And the following week, it wasn't that week that messed them up. It was the fact that they played the following Sunday, Friday, Sunday. They played on Sunday in Columbus against St. Louis, I think. Rick Majerus is in Columbus. There were tornado warnings, so the team couldn't leave the airport because of weather. By the time they flew from Columbus back to East Lansing on that Sunday, they got home, midnight or something. Dead tired, because they'd already gone through that rigorous Big Ten tournament with more of a depleted bench. And they won in Columbus on a Sunday, and then they had to play Thursday in the Sweet 16. That was like the only time, and they haven't done it since. I think there was a 2-year period where the NCAA had some teams that won in the second round, in the round of 32 on a Sunday, made them turn around and play on a Thursday. Usually if you play on a Sunday, you're playing on Friday. If you play Saturday, you're playing on a Thursday. State got completely screwed that year, had to go Sunday, Thursday. Got home late on Sunday. Not only did they go home late, they had to travel to Phoenix. The extra hour in the air physiologically does take more out of you. They played Louisville, who played Saturday. So Louisville had a Saturday, Thursday, not a Sunday, Thursday. Big difference. Michigan State went home. Louisville, classes are optional. They stayed out there. They played out west on a Saturday, and they stayed out there. They stayed, and they got to Phoenix on Sunday. They stayed in Phoenix Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they were good, and they beat Michigan State. They had more. They were a crafty, pesky defensive team with their little pesky press, deflections and everything, and they had a 6'11" guy from Africa that made a couple three-pointers, hadn't hit three-pointers all year. They played well. Michigan State lost. But the Sunday, Thursday turnaround, Columbus to Phoenix, they played Sunday, flew home Sunday, Monday, didn't practice, might have had a walk through, whatever, and we're back on a plane on Tuesday to go to Phoenix on Tuesday. Had a crappy practice out there, had a public practice on Wednesday, got beat on Thursday. That Sunday, Thursday turnaround, that was one time when the Sunday, Thursday turnaround really hurt Michigan State, and ironically, it wasn't from the Big Ten tournament to the NCAA tournament Thursday. It was within the NCAA tournament. That was bullcrap. Might have lost to Louisville anyway, but it had an impact on that one. All right, let's go through a few more of these, and then we'll get rolling. Because it's midnight, I got some work to do, a little bit more. I've got an article already up over at SpartanMag.com called The Hoop Feed with some quotes post-game, and it's a little bit of a rehash and analysis in there a little bit. Earline Wren says, good victory at all counts, March Madness. Brian V says, normally I would agree that bowing out of the Big Ten tournament early is better, but I think this team needs some confidence and some wins strung together. I agree with that. I think those 2 wins do the trick. I'm going to be good for the team to get to Sunday and have a shot at it, but you can get a little risk reward going there. I've beat that horse enough. Brian V says, cutting a net down Sunday would do wonders for the morale. $10 Tommy says, bring on the Boilers. YT Sparty says, this team is one of the best teams we've had. Our guards are amazing. We have a tall center, a big center. That guy's fired up. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but I want some of what he's drinking, but I appreciate his optimism. That's fun. Chris Martinez says, Jim, what is your ideal breakdown in terms of minutes allocation for this roster, assuming Michigan State plays their game and is not countering the opponent's lineup? You've got 200 minutes that need to be divvied up. You know, that point guard platoon is not bad, 20 and 20, Walker and Hogard. That seems to work. Now, today they played both point guards together for a few minutes here and there. Problem is, all right, so Christie, what did Christie play tonight? You know, Christie played 32 minutes. You know, there was a line of thinking that, you know, playing Christie for 33 minutes might have been a point in diminishing returns for him. There's a school of thought that if you cut him back to 28 minutes, you'll get a better Christie and you get more Akins minutes. But Christie was solid on defense and rebounding. He only had 2 rebounds today, but he was really going for some of those. He wasn't sloughing off on the boards at all. So, I mean, Akins plays 16 minutes tonight. I think that's pretty solid for him. I think it's about right. You know, Hauser and Hall, they played 19 and 18. Neither one of those guys were over 20 minutes because they got in that foul trouble, and at the end of the first half, they had to play Hogard a little bit at the 4. Hogard ends up playing 21 minutes. I think the allocation is fine. 20-20 at the 4, 20 and 20 at point guard. That can change a little bit if, like, Walker's red hot or somebody's fouling up or something. But I think an even split is not bad. Bingham, 22 minutes at the 5. Marble, 18 minutes at the 5. I think that's pretty good. You know, Bingham, Izzo was asked in the post-game press conference about Bingham playing 22 minutes, the most minutes he's played in a couple of months. And Izzo said, well, when Bingham comes out of a game, it's not necessarily because he's done something wrong. Bingham is a guy who still does not have great endurance. It's not as poor as it used to be, but he's not a guy that can give you 30 minutes. And the way I've said over the years, many times, I'll say it again, the way Michigan State tries to play with a blitz counter break or trying to run all the time, Michigan State is not always executing the fast break, but it's not because they're not running. They are always trying to sprint the lanes with the 2 and the 3 down the sideline and the 5 down the middle toward the rim. And even if they're not getting the ball, they're still making the opponent chase and they're making the opponent run, which in the course of the history for the program, that can wear out the opposition, which Izzo thinks hurts their shooting a little bit. The opponents might not always show, and he feels there's a wear-down factor that can help Michigan State in rebounding. It's been successful over the years, maybe not this year, but that's why Michigan State does it. You saw Bingham one time get loose on the counter break, catch it, dunk after they scored. So they're still doing that. So if you're asking Bingham to sprint every time, it's hard to ask him to play more than 22 minutes. But he's effective and productive. 22 minutes tonight for Bingham, 7 out of 11 from the field. You know, 19 points, 11 rebounds, tying a career high. But 22 and 18, Bingham and Marble, I don't think that's bad. I think today is close to ideal, even with a little bit of foul trouble that they had. Now you're not getting Pierre Brooks in there, but that's just kind of the way things are right now. Akins, you don't want to take any of his minutes away. He's been having an impact, and he's really crashing the boards. With Akins playing 16 minutes, knowing he's only playing 16 minutes, that's a guy that plays knowing he's not going to get tired, so he's giving max effort every second, and that shows up on the board sometimes. I think tonight's minutes are an ideal model, I think, for playing time. Gabe Brown, 22 minutes. He plays 22. Christie plays 32. So Akins gets a little bit of Browns and a little bit of Christie's. if Brown is playing really well, maybe he plays a little bit more and maybe Aikens a little bit less. But I think today was close to ideal for this particular team. Jim McKay, 6-man-1, says, got to limit the turnovers and keep the bigs in the paint to get on the boards. Brian V says, at this point in the season, the turnovers are who we are. It's not going to change. Just have to keep up that D intensity and rebound. Now, like I said, the turnovers came in a spat, but it was a short spat. And Michigan State only one turnover in the second half. And Michigan State avoided turnovers against Maryland for most of the game, except for the last 3 or 4 minutes. Now, of course, the last 3 or 4 minutes almost cost them the game, and that is part of the game. But that was a part of the game that was an outlier because it was full court pressure, man-to-man denial, which you don't see ever. And the 36 minutes prior to that, Michigan State has kind of gotten a little bit of a decent handle on their turnover situation. Now, when Michigan State loses, assuming they've got 2 more losses this year, would not be surprised if turnovers becomes a problem in those 2 games. But it's not the problem right now, in my opinion, that it was a month ago and for the season prior to that. $10 Tommy says, do you think they double the post against Purdue? It was pretty effective against Wisconsin, I thought. Konendijk and I talked about that. Really surprised that Michigan State, Izzo's not a guy that's wanted to double team the post in the past. He'll have it ready in case somebody's really killing them in the post, but it's not something he likes to do because he likes to keep guys bodied up for defensive rebounding. And Michigan State played some Goliaths at center this year. Coburn in Illinois, Edey at Purdue, Dickinson at Michigan. Been some big guys. And Michigan State has not double-teamed any of them. When they beat Purdue, they said, we're going to let Edey get his and make it tough for him. Not let him kick it out for 3-pointers. They wanted to give up. They wanted to let them attempt difficult 2s instead of 3s. And it worked. They eked it out. And Purdue had 4 or 5 turnovers, maybe more than that, trying to feed Edey and Trevion Williams in the post. Will they do that again? That's the way Michigan State played against Illinois, Purdue, and Michigan. Michigan twice. Did it work? They won 2 of those 4 games. It was painful. They're beating Michigan the first time, but Dickinson scores 25. They beat Purdue, but Edey scored a ton. And then, like I said, with Konendijk, Michigan State came out against Maryland and double-teamed the post. I'm like, where'd that come from? Then they double-teamed the post against Wisconsin. Where'd that come from? I've not asked Izzo about it, but I'm guessing they've just worked on it to improve that weapon to have if and when they go against a team in the tournament that has that type of guy. There's not a lot of guys like that around the country. There's the big guy, the 7'2" guy at Auburn, but I don't think you double team him because they got so many good 3-point shooters around them. But Auburn is a team that's not played well away from home. They've played well, but not as good as they do at home. Not as well as they play at home. And also, shot selection gets a little bit funky with Auburn. And Auburn, I think, peaked 5 weeks ago. But he's 7'2", and he's a real deal. So getting that card in your hand so you can play that card if it comes to it, just to get that double-team defense choreography and get that all straightened out is something Michigan State has done here in the last 2 games. It was a little bit wonky at the beginning of the Maryland game in terms of how they wanted to rotate that thing and close out. It was better tonight against Wisconsin. So they've got it in their back pocket. And yes, I do think they will utilize it against Purdue. Will they do it right away? Wouldn't surprise me. Purdue will feed the post. They'll make reads. I think Purdue sometimes gets carried away with feeding the post too much. Is that possible with those 2 guys, 2 excellent centers? I don't know. They've not had the season they were supposed to have. They've been kind of inconsistent. So Michigan State, if they double team, do they double team on the catch? Or do they wait and have it, and then they bring the double team on the bounce? Or do they hedge on the bounce and recover? There's different ways to do it. But yes, I do think they will. Will they do it from the very beginning? Wouldn't surprise me. I think they will do it. They might not totally hard hedge commit to it. Although Michigan State's done that a little bit too and, not gotten beat on it too bad. They double-teamed Brad Davison in the post because the way Wisconsin with the swing offense, they still run remnants of the swing offense. They'll invert and post up guards, and Davison's so good posting up and hitting turnaround jumpers. They've done that with guards for years. Michigan State started double teaming the guard, and Davison would pass out of a double team interior pass. Got a couple layups out of that, which is an amazing concept. Post up a guard, double team a guard, interior pass with a guard making the pass on an interior. That's Wisconsin for you. Matthew McClue says they should keep trying to win because we know they don't have a long run in them. I'd like to see them with the Big Ten tourney, win the Big Ten tourney. All right. Winning the Big Ten tourney seems like a big deal right now and on Saturday and on Sunday, but as soon as those brackets come out, it is yesterday's news and does not matter much at all. It matters a little bit around here and in East Lansing, but outside of East Lansing or whatever town wins it, last year Illinois won it, but who remembers that? It doesn't matter. It's good to have. It's good to have the banners. It's good to play well this time of year, but like I said, it'll feel like a big deal Saturday and Sunday, and then it's just flushed down the toilet and the brackets come out, and at that point, in the eyes of most, you still have not done much. YT Sparty says Purdue is not the three-point shooters they've been. That's an interesting point. Purdue led the Big Ten in three-point shooting most of the year, and I'm not sure they're as dangerous now as they've been in the past, and this guy makes that point. Let's see what they did tonight, see if I can find it. What do we have here? Purdue tonight against Penn State, 5 out of 14, 35%. Not bad, but not like drilling it. Eric Hunter, 2 out of 3 from 3. Jaden Ivey, 1 out of 4. That's about what Ivey is. He's about a 25% three-point shooter. Newman came off the bench, 2 out of 2. Stefanovic is their best gunner. He's 0 for 3 from three-point range. Interesting point. Brian V says, it sure seems like Tom is caving on his no doubling the post rule. I like it. Now he needs to
kick out. Hunter checks.
Now he needs to bend on his never full court press rule. Well, they did full court press back in 2005, and it was man-to-man press. They did not deny on the press. They did not deny passing lanes. It was just full court man-to-man. They did it that year because he genuinely felt that Michigan State went 11 deep. And he wanted guys to get tired and asked to come out of games. So the best way to get tired is to make them tired, full court pressure. Tires out the opponents too. Tires ourselves out is like what he liked to say. But full court pressure, I'll have to disagree with you on that. Izzo has kind of convinced me on that years ago. He says full court pressure, when you get to the Sweet 16, full court presses don't help anybody. Teams that get to the Sweet 16 can handle full court pressure and usually beat it and use it against them. Now Michigan State against Louisville in 2012, Louisville pressed and did it as a wear-down tactic and did it successfully and won a national championship. But usually full-court press teams don't go very far. St. John's presses now. They won a few more games this year than they usually do. But when Anderson was at Arkansas, they pressed, didn't do very well. There's not many teams Huggins did it at West Virginia for a couple of years, then he stopped doing it. Everybody remembers Nolan Richardson at Florida or at Arkansas with the 40 Minutes of Hell. They won a national championship. That's 25, 26 years ago. Jim Calhoun used to press at UConn, and they used to have NCAA problems. They didn't start going to Final Fours until he stopped pressing. But Michigan State went to the Final Four in 05 pressing, but it wasn't. It was man-to-man full court defense. They weren't trapping and trying to turn you over. They were just trying to get you to use fuel. So who else presses these days? Virginia Commonwealth did it. Got to Final Four kind of that one year with Shaka, Smart. Yeah, I guess that's one team that got there, but didn't. He doesn't. I don't know if he does that anymore. Kind of wears out its welcome because the thing is, you can only work on so many things. Well, McCaffrey used to press it at Iowa, and he doesn't do that anymore. The deal is, you've only got so many minutes in practice to work on things. You got film study to do, and there's so many things you need to do well. Izzo just doesn't believe in putting that practice time into something that he feels is not going to help him in the Sweet 16. Could it help you avoid upsets in the regular season here and there? Yeah, maybe so. But he doesn't see any point in spending time on something that's not going to help him in the tournament. YT Sparty says, we just need to beat Purdue. Winning Sunday is meaningless for the tourney seeding. It's a great point. But if you're going to play on Sunday, you might as well win. The problem is if you beat Purdue, now you got to play Sunday. Then you can run into that Sunday-Thursday situation. MSU Hunter says, checking in from cold, windy Wisconsin. Arizona won by 10. Thank you. Brian V., if you're playing Sunday, you play to win. That's the point in getting there if you're not showing up to win. I agree. If you get on Sunday, you're trying to win. I mean, Izzo's going to try to win. I'm just analyzing it from 10,000 feet. My analysis is not going to have any impact on how Michigan State plays. Don't get mad at me about it. I just think, yeah, like I said, a lot of people, I heard Goodman from Stadium talking about that it was good for Baylor to lose and get out. Underwood of Illinois said it was good for them to lose and get out. So it's no longer a radical concept. And yeah, Michigan State wants to beat Purdue tomorrow, and you're all going to be rooting for them. But I'm just saying, if Michigan State does a lot of things well and loses by 5, might not be a bad thing. Don't want to get blown out. You don't want to have a 20 turnover game. But if you lose, there's going to be something that goes wrong, right? You're either going to be cold, or your defense is going to have slippage, or you're going to turn it over, or you're going to miss free throws. Is it possible to play well and lose by 5? If so, that might not be a bad thing. Mr. Bowman says, these droughts are killing. Why do they keep going on them every game? They go 2 to 4 minutes without scoring. That's basketball. It's random. That's what happens. MSU Spartan says, happy for Bingham. Can he sustain that tomorrow and beyond? Yes, I think he can. YT Sparty says, Marty was unstoppable, and Izzo left him and started going to max. Like I said, Bingham can only play 22 minutes usually. So he's got to come out at some point. Why can't I find my notes on the game tonight? This was the night before. Which one did I use? Did I use a different one? What the hell? Anyway, let me see if I can find it. I don't know if that's it right over there or not. Yeah, here it is. Let me see what they did. All right, Bingham, when he went on his little run, he scored 11 straight points, which began like at the 10-minute mark. His 11th point gave Michigan State a 47-42 lead with 7:53 left. So 7:53 is left in the game. All right, then Michigan State got it back up, and that's when Hauser hit a three-pointer from the left wing. That was their largest lead to that point, I think, 50-44. No, I'm sorry. That was not the biggest lead. But anyway, three-pointer by Hauser, 7:15 left, up by 6. Next time Michigan State got the ball, they scored again. This time Hauser, again, catch and shoot, 16 feet. That was that pin down on that screen roll replace. So Michigan State's up 8 with 6:40 to go. So I'm guessing Marble went in and set the screen on that one. So Bingham was due to come out. So Bingham came out at that point. You're right. But it's not like the offense dried up at that point. Not yet. We'll take a look at it here. We'll go along as we go. So State's up 8. Bingham sits down after Bingham scored 11 straight points. 6:40 left. Then Michigan State, next time they have the ball, ran the same action. This time Hogard gets in the lane, hits a 14-footer left unguarded. Now it's 54-47, 6 minutes left. But Wisconsin's scoring too. But after Bingham scored his 11 straight points, Michigan State then scored 1, 2, 3 on 3 straight possessions, actually 4 straight possessions. Hepburn comes down, hits a three-pointer, cuts it to 54-50. They're trading baskets now. After a timeout, Michigan State runs baseline inbound play. Actually, it was not a timeout. It's just a baseline inbound play. Hauser catch and shoot, baseline jumper, 56-50 with 5:20 left. So Bingham is sat down, and Michigan State scores 1, 2, 3, 4. They go 4 for 4, and they didn't go to Christie like you posted, so it might not be the way you remember it. That makes it 56-50 with 5 minutes to go. All right. Now that Michigan State turns it over when Hauser does a spin dribble. Anytime Hauser starts to drive, I mean, he just falls to the floor. He's got terrible balance, man. He's got terrible. I think I posted the other day that he When he drives, it's kind of like Michael Spinks fighting Mike Tyson. All right, son, Michigan State gets it again, and they go to Malik Hall on screen roll replace. He turns down a shot. Who else? Who shoots? Oh, left wing Tyson Walker misses. On the putback, Hall fouled. Goes to the free throw line. 3 minutes left. Misses both free throws. But like I said, okay, so Hauser travels. Hall's at the free throw line. It's not like they're executing poorly. Just missed the free throws. And then they hit a three-pointer. Now they're up by 3. They go to the post. Hogard got in the post and missed a turnaround jumper off a sideline inbound. They ran a horn set. I can't see whether or not Bingham is in the game at this point. Then they went to Bingham, and Bingham scored on that hook shot with 2 minutes left to give him a 58-55 lead. So while Bingham sat, the point you're talking about, I assume you're talking about the time when Bingham scored 11 straight points. You're contending that he scored 11 straight points, he sat, and they went to Christie. Christie did not shoot a shot during this period, and Michigan State actually continued to operate offensively with efficiency. Then they put Bingham back in the game. Now, did they go to – then after this, so they went straight to Bingham, so you're wrong about that. 2 minutes to go. That puts them up 58-55. They come down, hit a 3, tie it up, and that's when Walker did that pivot, makes a shot, 60-58. Then Walker hits the elbow jumper, and there's 50 seconds left, and the rest were free throws. So you're wrong about that. You have to find something else to rip on Izzo about. If you're going to rip on Izzo, you better bring correct facts and not alternate facts. All right, what do we have here now? But thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I'm just here to let you know that if you're going to rip on Izzo, you better have some science behind it. I mean, I understand he's lost 300 games. So anytime you lose 300 games, there's going to be some shots that don't go in and things to question. Let's see here. $10 Thomas is really like Hogard and Walker out there together. You know, that really worked well in that Illinois game, and it worked well in that Purdue game. Then it did not work as well. Well, the Michigan game, Hogard was sick. They didn't do it at all. I think it was the Ohio State game, or was it the Maryland game? The Maryland game, they didn't do it at all. This time they went back to it a little bit. It's good if the offense is struggling. It can give you a little bit of something if offense is struggling. Also, they do it if they get in a little foul trouble at one of the wing positions. But it's kind of something that they're not scripting in. They scripted it in against Maryland at Breslin Center, but now they go to it just if things flow that way. And they can go to it if they need it. Just like they can go to Hauser and Hall together if they need it. Did not do it today. They do it against teams that go small. Doesn't always work, but it's a card they can play. Doesn't mean it's always going to be great, but it's something they've got. They're still working on that. YT Sparty says, is it possible to play Marble and Bingham? Well, that makes you a little slow of foot. You know, it's kind of like Purdue. They don't play Edey and Trevion Williams together. If you have two centers together, it gets a little wonky. Wonky is my new favorite word. It just works. We needed a word for wonky, and wonky has arrived in the year 2022 to provide that word. In my life, anyway. Xavier had Nunji, who was a transfer from Iowa. He was doing pretty good, and they had a big man that was injured. Then the other big man came back, and they played both big men together, and it was a failure. In today's game, Twin Towers doesn't work real well. You're better off having a stretch four. You need a four that can threaten from range, not only to score, but to stretch defense out to help. If you have two big men in there, it clogs things up, and it hurts the drive. It hurts a lot of things. It just in today's game with a 3-point line where it is, you're better off playing 4 around 1 rather than 3 around 2. So no, they could play together, but it wouldn't look very good. Mr. Bowman says, I see Tuck has brought Kevin Vickerson on the staff. What will be his role on the team? Well, Kevin Vickerson, former defensive tackle for Michigan State, played in the National Football League for a couple of years. He was around for both. He's been around for a couple of years. Officially last year. Before that, it was kind of a GA type of thing. But he works as an analyst, and he's got a lot of knowledge. And those kids seek a lot of knowledge. He's got a lot of know-how and the handiwork inside using hands, defensive tackle position. He has a role. Now, how much of a role are you supposed to have as an aide? Nebraska got in a little bit of trouble that last year. I'm not really sure, but Vickerson has a role. And, Vickerson's got his ear to the ground in recruiting, too. When players make visits to campus, he knows what's going on in recruiting. He has a role for sure. I thought he had a chance to maybe be hired as a D-line coach at Michigan State. But they went in another direction. But they're promoting all three as a defensive line positives. Vickerson has a role, trust it. And he's valuable, trust it. YT Spartan says Hogard also got beat by Johnny Davis, size mismatch. Well, if you're guarding Johnny Davis, it's kind of like swimming. If you swim, you're going to get wet. If you're guarding Johnny Davis, at some point he's going to get a basket. Can get some field goals. But Hogard moved his feet pretty well. They had that one miscommunication when he was at the 4 on that one. But by and large, Michigan State made life difficult for Johnny Davis. Chris Martinez says Gabe needs those cuts and curl touches. He disappears in the corner too often. I agree with that. And they did that curl first possession of the second half. Took it all the way in for that layup. And you're right, he gets in that Darrell Summers mode over there in the left wing with nothing but perimeter shots. Against Maryland, had a nice shot fake, one dribble into the lane, hit a couple in-between shots, which is good for him. He can't just fall in love and just be a one-trick pony with that three-point shot. He needs to vary it with that in-between game, sometimes off those pin-down curls. I agree with that. Can't forget about that. And that's a good thing they go to and they play. They call. It's not like they're calling the same plays all the time. When it's time to go to Hauser, they got some Hauser stuff. When they want to go to Gabe, they got some Gabe stuff. Sometimes they'll have some action over here that has a pin down for Gabe in case this doesn't work here. Sometimes he's coming off a pin down and the ball doesn't go there. But I agree with you. YT Sparty says Tug got an inside offensive lineman from Washington State. Yeah, his name's Brian Green. I interviewed him a couple nights ago. Good interview. I got to put that interview together. I got to do it. I got to do it at some point. I should type those in maybe tonight. It's midnight. It's getting late. I got to clean up my office too. GSF says Vickerson has been on staff. He's a defensive analyst. Thanks, GSF. GSF, don't be afraid to post, my man. You know your stuff. YT Sparty says Gabe was defending Davis. Well, he was sometimes. Primarily, it was Christie to begin with. And then when Hogard came in for Walker, then Hogard guarded Davis, and Christie moved and guarded somebody else. Not Hepburn, must have been Davison. So Hogard did it. That kept Christie a little bit more fresh. And then when Christie sat and Akins came in, then Akins guarded him. So they had like a rotation going. They had a plan for it. And the great thing about it is they had three guys that were capable of doing it. Christie, Hogard, Akins. And I don't think you want Christie guarding that guy for all 32 of his minutes. So Christie did it just enough and then got off of him. Hogard came in and relieved him. It worked out really well. Hogard valuable, that 6'4" size to guard a guy like that. Very valuable. And then, Hogard guarded Davison a little bit too. And Davison's a guy that usually does a good job bullying other guards, but he can't bully Hogard. And Akins comes in and plays 60 minutes with all that energy, and that's good too. Like I remember when Michigan State lost to North Carolina, Roy Williams had success, but I'm not sure he was a great X's and O's coach, but he did it his way and had a lot of success. But when Drew Neitzel's junior season lost to North Carolina and Winston-Salem down there in the second round, I think it was 2007, it was maybe Izzo's weakest roster he ever had. They got into the tournament as an 8-9. I think 8-9. Beat Marquette with Tom Crean in the first round. You might remember that. Neitzel was good. The next game they played North Carolina. North Carolina was so good with they did blitz counter break too. And North Carolina went 9 or 10 deep. And Michigan State hung in that game, and Michigan State out-executed and out-coached Roy Williams. But Williams just had too many people. Ty Lawson was on that team. It was the beginnings of what would eventually become their 2009 national championship team. But they brought guys off the bench that would only play like maybe 10 minutes. And it would be a 10-minute guy that would come in and just get in Drew Neitzel's chest, in his chin strap, and just 10 minutes of helter-skelter defense, running, making Neitzel chase him, just 10 minutes. Akins does a little bit of that. He comes in, Akins, you're guarding Davis, give it hell. That can be effective. Akins is playing a nice role there. Mike K says it's going to be a bloodbath tomorrow. YT Sparty says MSU rising, Purdue falling. I like our chances. Brian V says, didn't Raymar Morgan play a bunch of four-man too? Wasn't he a wing primarily by trade? Yeah, Raymar Morgan did play both. Yeah, he did. And sometimes they were better when he played the four. Yeah, he was a four. He was better at the four than the three, in my opinion. He was never a real good shooter. As a three, he was just kind of a not really all that athletic of a wing. He was just kind of a mediocre athlete who played tough. You put him at the four, he was athletic for a four and big enough to play the four. He was actually taller than Marquise Gray. So Raymar Morgan as a senior was on that 2010 team that went to the Final Four, lost a tooth in that victory over Tennessee in the regional finals in 2010 in St. Louis, I think. Yeah, St. Louis. Good times. Morgan was a four. And let's see. Anyway, but yeah, he was a guy that played both, which, Konendijk and I used to talk about. Gabe Brown was a guy possibly that could do that as well, but he's just not as strong. They've never used Gabe Brown as the four like they did Raymar Morgan. Delvon Rowe played some three and some four, primarily four, though. He played a little bit of three at the beginning. He thought himself as a three, but he was a four. Morris Peterson played some four. In 2000, during the rotation, he would play about 5 minutes in each half at the four. Go look it up. Hudson would start with Granger. And then, Anaganye would play. And Peterson was the fourth big man. He would play the four. And they'd have Cleaves out there with David Thomas a little bit, Chappelle a little bit, and Charlie Bell. So you had a lot of backcourt players with Bell, Thomas, Cleaves, Chappelle. So Peterson would swing down to the four. First a few, it was just part of the rotational plan every half. $10 Thomas says Marble is the king of the 12-foot jump hook. Those jump hooks are looking good. Both of those guys have developed nice jump hooks. And Marble, I'd like to see what his shooting percentage is on that 17-foot face-up. He knocks that thing down. Spartan Marinelli 87 says, we want a Big Ten tournament championship. We need a banner. We don't need rest. We need a banner. That's what he says in all caps. So he means it. Austin J checking in. Mr. Boneman, GSF, just seen this announced. I don't know what that means. Mr. Bowman says, YT Sparty, he looked like a good OL. Oh, talking about the green guy from Washington State. He's all right. I went through the Central Michigan game, the guy from Washington State, Brian Green. I went through the bowl game. Washington State played Central Michigan in the Sun Bowl. And he had missed a couple of games late in the season. And he looked okay in that game. Didn't look great, quite honestly. He's playing left guard in that game. I asked him about that, and he said he was bothered by injuries this year. I said, the year before, they only played 4 games in the Pac-12, and he made all Pac-12, like second team all Pac-12, or honorable mention, something like that. I've not watched any of those 4 games from 2020, the COVID year. I'll have to go back and watch. I asked him, did you think you were better in 2021 or 2020? And he said definitely 2020. So I've not seen those games yet, so I'm going to reserve a little more judgment until I watch some of those 2020 tapes. He looks okay. He looks to me like, like a Matt Carrick type of guy. That all-conference stuff at Pac-12 looks impressive on paper, but we'll wait and see. Good kid. He's a double major, finishing his second major in May, and then he'll enroll at Michigan State. He's excited. He wants to be part of a winner. He wants to be part of a good culture. So he'll be driving out here in May with his fiancée. $10 Thomas says, Iowa looks unbeatable right now. Hard to see them losing to Indiana unless they can't hit shots. I agree. And Murray, to me, is the best player in the Big Ten. And I posted this on the Underground Bunker or on the Final Four, a message board a couple of days ago. If you could pick any player in the Big Ten for an NBA roster, if you're starting an NBA team, who would you pick? I think I'd go with Keegan Murray. I think he's got long arms, good length, at all of 6'8", can get his shot, skill, touch. That's going to translate really well to the NBA game, I would think. And if I were starting a college basketball team and I could have anybody in the Big Ten, I'm taking Murray. And we'll see how that pick ages here in the next couple of weeks. But you see what I'm talking about right now. I mean, he's been good all year. He's put up numbers all year. Destroyed Michigan State when Michigan State visited Iowa City. And I was impressed again with him when they beat Michigan rather handily a couple of weeks ago. I mean, Michigan came back at Chrysler a little bit, but Iowa came out just gangbusters in the first half, and that guy's just hard to stop. Last night here on the podcast, Nils Deco said that he reminds him a little bit of Carmelo Anthony, and I don't disagree with that. He's excellent. So you got that, plus you got his brother's pretty good, and Bohannon's got a lot of experience and glue. They create shots. It's hard to keep them from getting their shots, and when they get their shots, they make their shots. Can they keep up athletically? Can they keep up defensively? That was a problem last year when they lost to Oregon in the tournament. But Iowa was one of those many teams in the Big Ten that was out of the gas going into the tournament. That's my theory. We'll see if what happens this year hurts that theory at all. If everybody in the Big Ten tanks again this year, then that'll hurt that theory. We'll see. And I'm sure if that happens, someone will remind me of it, which is okay. That's what we're here to do. But Murray's good. I agree. And also, when you play in the Big Ten championship game, if it's Michigan State and Iowa, they both will be playing their fourth game because neither team had a bye. When you get to the Big Ten championship game, a lot of times there's not as much of the scouting going on. It becomes a little bit more, in my opinion, of like YMCA basketball. Just, open windows and shots and, shot making and trading buckets because teams are tired and they're going on fumes a little bit more, adrenaline and emotion. And it just usually lends itself to high scoring type of shootout games, and that's Iowa's game. So, yeah. I think it's Iowa's looking good right now. And my Big Ten tournament thoughts that I posted before the tournament started, some of those were wrong. I thought Michigan would be better. I thought the Michigan-Illinois winner was going to win the tournament. They didn't even play each other. But I said, of everybody in the field, I said Iowa, in my opinion, had the best chance to get to the semifinals. Because I didn't know who would get there between Illinois and Michigan. Of course, neither one of them did. But I thought Iowa had a good draw, and they were going, and they're there. So I got that one right. The other one's not so much. Chris Foulin says, is possible we can watch a little film on Jackson Kohler and get an analysis for you? I was looking, okay, maybe we'll get into that in the off season. Thanks for asking. He's got skill. He's a little bit, he's getting to become rugged. He's got some skill. He reminds me a little bit of a cross between Goran Suton and Zach Randolph. More of the face-up Randolph. He's got good use of that pivot foot, too, though. Zach was so good with his back to the basket as a 10th grader. Remained good as an 11th or 12th grader, but then he started falling in love with that face-up shot, as he should. It turned him into a multimillionaire. But we'll get into that. I've not looked at Jackson Kohler in a while. I've not seen any of his senior film. I wanted to go down and watch him about a month and a half ago. They were playing in Dayton. And Paul and I were talking about it, but didn't end up making the trip. Wanted to, but that's what you have to do nowadays. You have to drive like 5 hours to see recruits and talk to them because they don't. Now, I interviewed him after he committed, but like the uncommitted guys, it's hard to get in touch with them. Chris Martinez says Big Ten should restructure the tourney to play the final Saturday night. I would love to see that happen, but the TV networks like having the Big Ten go last to get all the eyes, it maximizes the viewership right before the bracket show. Because all these basketball games all that they are TV shows. You know that, right? And they like those Big Ten television sets. And the Big East has always finished things up on Saturday night. They've kind of always done it that way. Chris Martinez is not sure how the buys will work, but agree with this Sunday-Thursday turnaround. Ferris comes in and tells us that Michigan beat Michigan State 87-70. Brilliant. Gary Primo says Juwan doesn't press, he uses the pressure 5. Yeah, I got that in the Wisconsin game. That was just childish. I went through that before. Brian V says not press the entire game, but when down late in the game, we never seem to do it. Michigan State will do it. If they get down like 8 with a minute to go, they'll press, but your point's well taken. MSU Detroit fan says, that becomes more true, especially if we beat Purdue tomorrow and win the Big Ten tournament against Iowa or Indiana. Speaking of free throws, is there a sweeter free throw shot than Max? Great arc, perfect drop. Reginald says, dang, I'm late. How much did I miss? You've missed a lot. You can go back and watch it again. Tennessee, Michigan State in the Elite Eight was 2010 because Maryland buzzer beater was also that. All right, Dawson came in as a wing and ended up a 4 as well. Great point, Brian V. You're exactly right. Dawson was a 4 that could play some 3. They tried to move him to the 3. Miles Bridges played the 4 out of necessity as a freshman. Came back as a sophomore, talking about making him be more of a 3. And I thought it was a disaster. When he was guarded by a quicker 3, they usually kind of locked him up, and he'd always end up driving to the baseline. They were and at the end of games, they'd put him at the 4. And that was their best lineup. But he spent most of his season at the 3. I never liked that team. I know they went 32-5 or whatever. I never thought that team was that great. Then they lost to Syracuse in the second round. That team just never got things ironed out. I know Jaren Jackson was a great talent, but they had Nick Ward, and they were uncomfortable. You know, those two playing together, and then Miles Bridges. They needed to play Bridges at the 4 that year, because then he would have had more of a quickness advantage over other 4s trying to guard him. Meanwhile, he had the strength to play defense in the post of the 4. So that team just never had the balance. Keegan Murray has some Kawhi Leonard in him, says Alex James. Kawhi has a lot of strength and toughness. Does Keegan have that much toughness? Maybe he'll develop it. I think Kawhi Leonard is great, though. Gary Martinez says, would jumping Johnny Green start for this team? All right, it's my favorite question of the night. You know, when I go into the Breslin Center, usually when I'm leaving the Breslin Center after games, it's usually like 2 hours or 3 hours after the game is over, and I'm all bundled up, and I come through the Hall of History, and they've got those television sets up with all those old games running 24. They're showing games right now if you walk through there. 24-hour loop. They're just showing old games from the 50s and 40s and 60s and 70s. And I'm usually trying to watch some Terry Furlow highlights if I can find them. I'm always trying to find Johnny Green highlights, and I may have seen once. I've got a terrible memory these days. I used to have a really good memory, but now something that happens 3 weeks ago, I can't remember if I saw it or if I imagined that I saw it. I think I saw a brief clip once, but I know that I've not seen a lot of Johnny Green tapes walking through that Hall of History. That's 1957, and I've been looking for them. I want to see what he was all about. He was a guy that was literally 50 years ahead of his time. Yeah, maybe 40. Would he start for this team? Yeah. If you took Johnny Green, I've not seen him play, but he just stuck out as a leaper back then. He was 6'5". I don't know. But if Johnny Green came around today, he would develop as... Was he 6'6"? How tall was he? He'd be like a Jason Richardson type. I don't know if he jumped that well. I don't know. I got to see some film on him. I don't know. So would he start ahead of Hauser and Hall at the 4? I think probably. If you plucked him right out of 1957, no. But if you took Johnny Green from like 1953 when he was in the Marines or the Army or whatever it was, and you put him maybe 2 years prior to that, and you put him at name a high school. I can't even think of like who the powerful high school is anymore in basketball, the state of Michigan. Is there a Detroit Power? There's not a Flint Power. That's kind of, I don't know. Jaden Akins played at Farmington, then he went to one of those all-star teams. Gabe Brown was at Belleville. They were okay. High school basketball in Michigan is not what it was. A lot of good kids, a lot of good coaches doing a great job doing their thing. But like the upper, those old power, super power rivalries and everything. Even your country days, and I don't know about Benton Harbor anymore, the Muskegon teams. I don't even know. That's a little bit of a blind spot for me right now. I got to do some research on that. The foam corner says Sissoko still looks very underdeveloped to me. I would agree. Do you think he'll be a productive starter at one point? Izzo believes in him. They like his effort and his strength, his leaping ability, and not a terrible shot, but it's awkward. One of his problems is, he had a turnover the other night that got loose nearly for a touchdown. Sissoko goes into games and he doesn't know the plays. I mean, if that doesn't get fixed, he's not going any further. Chris Druin says, just got home from a biz trip to Orlando, missed the whole game. Where is the Comp Dorsey recap video, and where is my Final Four is not on the schedule podcast? Chris is pretty demanding. YT Sparty says, Miles and Jaren Jackson, what a waste. Reginald says, gosh, that Bridges Jackson team had Cassius as a point guard. Yep. Yeah, Jaren Jackson didn't play much in that Syracuse game. I thought he was playing well. I'd like to go back and watch that game again. I know Michigan State missed a lot of jump shots and got hit jump shots against them. But I didn't think Jaren was playing that bad that day. And Izzo, everyone knows I love him, and he will bench people, but to make players better, to make everybody understand what needs to be done. He's done it over the years to a lot of players. Darrell Summers, Brandon Dawson, Nick Ward, Marcus Bingham. It's happened. Goran Sutan. And those guys end up having, have all had storybook endings. Maybe not Summers so much. Had a storybook junior year. And that's good. He benched Darrell Summers in the Big Ten tournament when they lost to Minnesota that one time. He's benched players in the Big Ten tournament before. But when you start benching players in the actual NCAA tournament, I can't agree with that one. You almost have to just, even if it's first or second round, whether it be Jaren Jackson, or even in that game against Middle Tennessee State, he had a rotation of power forwards trying to guard people. I thought that, who's the guy from St. Louis that came to Michigan State with Tum Tum? Marvin Clark. Marvin Clark, 1 week earlier against Purdue in the Big Ten tournament, played 13 minutes and fouled out. I mean, he used all his fouls. And then a week later against Middle Tennessee State, if my numbers are right, he went away from Marvin Clark. Tried Colby Walleman, tried Kenny Goins, he got hurt. Didn't go back to Marvin. Was that the game? Or no, was that... Now, Marvin Clark did play in the regional final in 2015 against Louisville as a freshman. That's another one of those freshmen that came around. Hit a big corner shot against Louisville, right? Then the next year was the loss to Middle Tennessee State. Marvin was a sophomore, went away from him. Not sure why I never asked him about it. Jaren Jackson sat him down. That one doesn't age very well. So I'm all for getting these guys to play the right way during the regular season, even the Big Ten tournament. But once you're playing Middle Tennessee State or once you're playing Syracuse, you kind of need to go with your talent. If the crap isn't together at that point, because Izzo, you never want to lose, obviously. But sometimes Izzo has got a little Bob Knight in him in the regular season. Sometimes he won't lose on purpose, but if it takes a loss to get through to some guys, he'll make that trade. Of course, he won't do that in NCAA tournament, of course, but I think his February mindset crept into that one in Detroit that night, I kind of think. But I need to go back and watch that game again. They were getting shots, but they played the kid that transferred from UNLV. Forget his name. Ben something. But yeah, that didn't turn out well. But I never really liked that team. They were 32-5 or whatever, but and I said it all along. I'm like, I didn't think that. I wasn't sure about that team. Doug Seeley says, if Michigan State can play like they did tonight, playing a good full 40 minutes, or at least close to 40 minutes, we could go a little ways in the tournament. I don't disagree. Get a 7 seed and win that first game, which won't be easy. Second game, you're either going to be playing Baylor, maybe Auburn, maybe Kentucky, maybe Duke, maybe Kansas. It's going to be a big wig. Gary Martinez says, thanks. Johnny's my favorite. Great show. All right, my man Gary, I think, saw Johnny Green play. Man. 1957. Johnny Green, semifinals against North Carolina. Triple overtime. Michigan State lost. A lot of witnesses think Michigan State hit a half-court shot at the buzzer in the second overtime, and Michigan State should have won that game. A lot of witnesses think Michigan State got gypped out of that game. I think that game was in Lexington, Kentucky. Lexington, Kentucky, North Carolina, 1956. I don't have to tell you much about what was going on in the country at that time. Johnny Green. North Carolina was undefeated. North Carolina played in the finals against Wilt Chamberlain. Kansas beat Kansas in overtime. North Carolina won, finished the season undefeated. One of only, 2 teams that have been undefeated in the last 70 years? The other one being, did UCLA have some undefeated teams? Indiana, of course, in 1976. There have not been a lot of undefeated national champions. That North Carolina team was an undefeated national champion. Some witnesses say they didn't beat Michigan State. The Final Four. And I think Michigan State had upset Kentucky earlier, right? So you got these Yankees coming down with Johnny Green on their roster to play North Carolina. I don't know. There's a story in there somewhere. I don't know enough about it. Makes me wonder. YT Sparty. It's like Michigan State could have had TJ Plax and Charles Rogers had they stayed all 4 years. Flint Beecher. Yeah, Flint Beecher's still pretty good. All right, thank you. I got to look at the rankings, and I don't even know. That's a blind spot for me. I shouldn't have even admitted that because I've not looked at it closely this season. Beecher's good. All right, I got to look into that. Tommy Glover, what did I miss? Doug Seeley says that was a good high school team. Talking about Beecher for basketball back in the old days. They've been good recently, too. But, yeah, Beecher when they had Roy Marble. 1980. 87. They had that rivalry with Saginaw Buena Vista with Mark Macon and those guys. Chris Druin says Johnny Green averaged 16 points and 16 rebounds. He would start at 6'5". 6'5" was kind of tall back then. Now it'd be more of a wing. How tall is Branham for Ohio State? 6'5"? Branham's got great skill. Would Green have developed like that? It's probably what it'd be like Branham. Maybe a little better leaper. Branham can leap, though. Terry Tyler type of guy. Anyone remember Terry Tyler? He was a good leaper. Sissoko is high energy, which is good. That's right, YT Sparty. They like that energy, they like that muscle, and the guy that wants to do it. Mr. Bowman says Detroit King is very good. That's good to hear. I need to look into that. I need to know that. I'm ashamed of myself I don't know that. I try to stay abreast on Big Ten basketball, football recruiting, spring football, and other stuff. And, in the old days when you used to get newspapers, that information would come to you. Open up the Free Press, News, Lions State Journal, you get that information. I hate to say it, but I don't get newspapers anymore, so that information does not come to me. You have to go look for it, and I don't get around to going and looking for it. It's my bad. I'm not proud of that. Johnny Green averaged 18 points, 17 rebounds per game. I think he could find his way onto the floor. Izzo's type of guy. Chris Druin says, sorry, I missed the game. Highlights don't tell me as much as you guys. Highlights don't tell me as much as you guys. Oh, okay. Well, hopefully you recorded it and go back and watch it again. I'm a big proponent of rewatching games, even if I know the outcome. I don't watch many games live. I try to consume games. I got to zip through them. The Foam Corner says, I would feel better if that high energy had translated to rebounds. Sissoko's potential awareness is rough. Don't disagree with that. Alex James says, would this Michigan State team have won the Big Ten with a guy like Matt Costello? Not special, but a solid guy down low. I think this team lacked this year shooters. Your Bryn Forbes, your Maurice Ager. I know Gabe Brown and Christie have tried to provide that, but when this team went south, they didn't have good shooting. And Izzo said also they didn't have good leadership. So even if the leader's not like a great player, like if you put in Travis Walton and Bryn Forbes, I think you win a Big Ten championship. I'm not sure the interior was the weakness this year. Give me a leader and give me some better shooting. Brian V says, what's the kid name that played over JJ against Syracuse? Was it Ben Simon, something like that? Ben Carter. Thanks, Alex James. He played a little bit. Some others did. Are you thinking of Deontay Davis against Middle Tennessee? Yeah, I probably did get that. It was Deontay Davis that came out against Middle Tennessee. Yeah, he did. He sat in that game also. They stopped with him. So when did Marvin Clark, was he part of that too? See, Michigan State against Middle Tennessee was trying different power forwards, and they kept yanking them out. But you're right, Deontay Davis came out against Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee had, they had the little shooter. I forget what his name is with the funny name that was good, and Middle Tennessee had a crazy efficient offense that day. But Middle Tennessee had a stretch four, a legit like Kenny Goins type of stretch four, and I said that in the VCast down there in St. Louis the night before the game. Conan and I were in the stands, and we were breaking down the game, and I said that they had a stretch four, and Michigan State had not seen any or many stretch fours in the Big Ten all season. Michigan had a decent one that year. I forget what his name was. It's late. I can't think of his name. But nobody else in the Big Ten had a four who could shoot or take you off the bounce. And Michigan State hadn't seen it. And whether or not you could play defense against that type of guy is one of the check boxes, one of the boxes you have to check if you want to go a long way in the tournament. And I said at some point they're going to run into somebody like that who guards that guy. This team right now doesn't really have that guy. Xavier Tillman was the guy that guarded Zion Williamson. He could guard, Andre Hudson could guard a four. Antonio Smith guarded Scott Padgett of Kentucky back in '99 when Padgett was a very good mismatch mobile stretch four back before they called them stretch fours. You need to have a guy that can guard a guy like that. And that team went into the tournament unclear if they had someone that could guard anyone like that because the Big Ten didn't have anyone like that, so you didn't get a chance to test it. And that was one of the, Deontay Davis had all kinds of talent as a freshman, but could you trust him to guard a mobile four? That was my big question going into the NCAA tournament. And that was a Michigan State team that a lot of people were picking to win the national championship. And I was like, that's a variable, that's something we don't know. And when Middle Tennessee State got out to that strong, Zach Irvin was the guy's name, right? At Michigan. He was 6'6", but he played the four for Michigan. He was one guy that was a mismatch four. That he was the closest thing in the entire Big Ten to present Michigan State with the task of guarding a mobile stretch four. So, and I can't remember what the guy's name was for Middle Tennessee State, but I'm like, Potts, right? Icky Potts or Ziggy Potts, something like that. He was the shooter, but I'm like, okay, that guy's all right. The four is the guy that's a problem, and that's the guy that scored like 8 points in the first 5 minutes, if I remember right. Helped them get that 15-0 lead or whatever it was. That wasn't the only reason they lost, but that was a problem. I mean, they put Clark in there, they put Wallerman in there, they put Goins in there, he got hurt. They put Deontay Davis in there, and they just never settled on anybody. But I think it was both Clark. I think Clark was on that team, right? Because Clark was on the 15 team. He made a big shot as a freshman the year before, and they beat Louisville in the regional finals to go to the Final Four and lost to Duke in the Final Four. That was the game where they were blowing a whistle I think they averaged a foul every 52 seconds in that game. Just totally stopped the game. It was just stoppage. Michigan State needed that one to go back and forth, up and down, because they wanted to run Okafor in the blitz counter break. Never got a chance to run them because it was whistle. Izzo wasn't happy with that. He didn't feel like his team got a chance to play actual basketball, and he thought that Wisconsin got screwed too against Duke in the championship game, if he's honest with you. Giddy Potts, thank you. I thought Clark was at St. John's by then. I think Clark played at Michigan State in 15 as a freshman and 16 as a sophomore. Then he went to St. John's. I might be wrong. Izzo Young Davis, who was scoring at will because he wasn't playing D. Yeah, That's kind of what I'm talking about. Making defensive errors. That's when, the first round of the NCAA tournament, whether it's Deontay Davis or Jaren Jackson, I'm not big on sending a message once you're into the tournament. You kind of are where you are at that point. But Izzo's playing to win championships, and there's a right way to play, and I understand that. But could they have avoided a couple of upsets there by doing it differently? That's one thing that if Izzo asked me, I would disagree with him about. I wouldn't present him with that opinion. He doesn't need that information, my opinions on that. But Izzo does ask reporters once in a while what they think about things, and I don't give my opinion unless someone asks my opinion. In those type of circles, around people like Izzo or people that know more than I do, I just shut up and listen. And once in a while, disagree. No, he's pretty good though, right? 1957, Kansas City, Missouri, Michigan State versus North Carolina. It was not on TV. I listened on the radio. My man Gary, bringing it. Listen to it on the radio. Kansas City. Yes, it was Kansas City. I should know that because it's listed up there in the banners. It says Kansas City. My bad. Thanks, Gary. You listened on the radio. That must have been something. Jeez. And if there's film of it somewhere, it won't be synced up with the final buzzer. Reginald says, thank God Virginia lost to UMBC, so people forgot about the Middle Tennessee State loss. Yeah. Reggie Upshaw was the 4 for Middle Tennessee State. Killed us. That's the guy, Upshaw. Power forward. Michigan State had a little trouble guarding him, and it was a weakness all year. And in the VCasts, I said it was a question mark. And that was something I said. That team, they were favorites to win the national title also, but they went into that season with a question mark at that position. And they needed Davis to come around and really gain traction. He had a lot of talent, but never quite got it right. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up. Appreciate everybody checking in. This is a long one tonight. Went 2 hours post-game. Appreciate everybody checking in and being a part of the post-game. I don't know if we'll do it tomorrow or not. I got some other stuff I need to do post-game. Maybe we'll do a quick one. I'm not sure, but probably not. Probably won't do one of these on Saturday night. Apologize. But solid chance we'll be back here on Sunday to talk about the brackets. So write that one down. We did it a little bit last year. I'll try to take a look at some. He was the orange-haired guy. We'll see what the brackets are, and I'll try to watch a little bit of some film of whoever Michigan State draws, and we'll get around and we'll talk about it on Sunday night. We'll talk some brackets. And in the meantime, go give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Just go to SpartanMag.com and become a subscriber over there. Appreciate everybody checking us out. Enjoy the basketball. It's March Madness. See you around. Thanks for watching Spartan Mag Live. Jim Comparoni, East Lansing, Michigan, SpartanMag.com.